Library of Heaven's Path, author Hung Sao Tianya.
Chapter 3.
Un. Shenbi Ru, who was the compendium pavilion as well, heard the continuous sounds of footsteps and flipping of books. Initially, she didn't think much into, but as time passed, she started to feel that something was amiss with the situation. One would need to read a book slowly to comprehend its contents. How could it be possible for anyone to flip through it so quickly? Bewildered, she couldn't resist walking over to take a look. After which, she saw Zhang Xuan flipping the books from the first shelf. It was very apparent to see that he wasn't reading through the contents of the books, but more like looking for something. Is this the reason why Elder Mo denied him entry? After watching for a moment, she realized that the other party didn't have the intention to stop. Gedeng, Shenbi Ru's heartbeat. Previously, the reason why she couldn't resist speaking out to help him upon seeing the difference between the current him and his previous self was because she wanted him to work hard so as to be freed from his current awkward position. However, she would have never imagined that this fellow wasn't here to study, but to look for something. This was the Compendium Pavilion. Every day, there were innumerable teachers who come in, so it was impossible for there to be anything valuable hidden here. Flipping through these books so casually was almost a blasphemy to this Compendium Pavilion. How repulsive. Perhaps. He knew that I would be coming to the Compendium Pavilion today, so he intentionally waited outside, then came in to make such a ruckus to capture my attention. This would only provoke my ire. The image of the young man in Shenbi Ru's heart fell to the pits. Due to her beauty, many people have tried many ways to get on her good side, as well as to attract her attention. In her opinion, Zhang Xuan wasn't even trying to look through the books. Rather, he was intentionally making those noises to change her opinion of him. In reality, she hated it when people made up this kind of show. After looking at her a moment longer, she ascertained her opinion. If he was truly here to browse through the books, how could he possibly be reading books of all genres? Furthermore, to be flipping through them at such rapid speed, he was probably unable to even ascertain the name of the manual. Needless to say, its contents. With a darkened expression on her beautiful face, she walked over to Zhang Xuan. "Zhang Laoshi, what are you doing?" "Reading books." Zhang Xuan didn't realize that his actions have already been labeled as putting up a show, and replied casually without raising his head. "Reading books? Shenbi Ru harumphed coldly. Coldness emanated from her jade-like face as she said, "If you think that your actions are cool and would attract my attention, please retract those immature thoughts of yours. I, Shenbi Ru, do not fall for such petty tricks. Furthermore, your actions will only incur my irritation." "Oh! All right," Zhang Xuan continued flipping through his books. He intended to imprint all of the manuals in the Compendium Pavilion onto the Library of Heaven's Path by today, and time was a little tight for him, so he didn't have the effort to spare to be chatting with others. Besides, in his opinion, the other party was simply being too self-important. What business did she have to do with what he was doing? You might be truly pretty, but it isn't like I have yet to meet a beautiful woman like you. In the previous world, in the era of information, there are all kinds of beauties stored in the hard disk. Furthermore, they are skilled in blowing, pulling, playing, and singing. A cold beauty like you does not hold much interest to me. I don't have the energy to think of ways to attract your attention. Since you understand it, please leave this compendium library. Stop wasting your effort here. Seeing how the young man's head remained lowered, still putting on a show, Shenbi Ru turned and gestured him to leave. Dang, 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 the sound of the footsteps of the young man leaving. This is more like it. Seeing how he gave up readily, Shenbi Ru nodded her head in satisfaction. Just as she was about to continue to read her book, she heard the sound of the flipping of books echoing in the library once again. "Hua-la-la! Hua-la-la-la!" Turning her head to take a look, she realized that the young man had no intention to leave. You... Shen Biru almost exploded from anger. Are you done yet? I have already said that doing this will just incur my irritation, yet you still persist in doing so. Is there a point to it? At this point, her slim figure straightened, and she walked up to Zhang Xuan once again, and disgust could be clearly seen in her pitch-black pupils. Did you not hear my words? The more you behave like this, the more disgusted I would be with you. You won't earn my fancy like this. Are you sick? Seeing the other party coming over to bother him again, Zhang Xuan was a little irritated. He stopped his actions and said, "You read your own stuff while I'll read my own. If you are really bored, you can squat by a corner and draw circles. Don't bother me here." It is not like I have never met a beautiful lady in my life before. Why are you acting so haughtily? She didn't expect the young man to speak like this. Shen Biru felt her sight blurring, and she almost died from the overwhelming rage welling in her. Who was she? Hongtian Academy's #1 beauty. Blessed with great talent and looks, almost all of the teachers and students in the academy regarded her as a goddess. Before her, they would act respectfully, not daring to even speak loudly for fear of offending her. Yet you dare to say, "I am sick," even asking me to squat at a corner to draw circles? I am a lady, all right? Draw circles. Draw your mum's fat head. Shenbiru felt a heavy and stuffy sensation on her chest that she was unable to relieve. Wa-la-la. Wa-la-la-la. Her face flushed red from anger. Just as she was about to reprimand the other party, she realized that the young man had gone back to flipping through the books after being done with his words, not even sparing her an additional glance. Fine, fine. Continue putting on an act. See how I will reveal your true colors. Luoluo, Shenbiru gritted her teeth tightly and stomped her leg. This was the first time that a man had talked to her in such a manner. Fine. Aren't you putting on an act of browsing through the books now? Let's see how long you can put up with it. When you are finally unable to continue on, I will expose you and leave you embarrassed. Then Shenbiru no longer bothered herself with Zhang Xuan, and instead angrily walked back to the manual she had looked for previously and casually took it out. Then, sitting in a corner in the room, she started copying it down. Initially, her mood was quite good today, and she intended to study for quite a while to boost her knowledge. Yet, never in her dreams would she expect to meet such an infuriating fellow. In the midst of copying down her notes, she sneaked glances periodically towards him. The young man still continued flipping through all of the books with the same speed, seemingly adamant to leave no book unturned. It seems that as long as it was a book of the Compendium Pavilion, he would surely flip through it once. Let's see how long you can keep up the act for. After being rebuked by Zhang Xuan, Shen Biru no longer retained her calmness from before, and she intended to make things difficult for him. As she copied down her notes slowly, she waited for the moment when the other party was unable to keep up with the act. However, what left her bewildered was that the young man repeated his actions over and over again with the same astonishing speed. From the very first bookshelf, he moved from one row to another, flipping through the books from afternoon to night, not even sparing a single minute to rest. It had already been 6 to 7 hours, yet the fellow was still persisting on with the same motion. Even Shenbiru found it inconceivable at this point. If his aim was to attract her attention, she had already clearly told him that she detested such actions, so he should have stopped then. So, how was it possible for him to continue flipping through like this? Not to mention, for such a long period of time? Could this fellow's brain be convulsing or something? Has his cultivation went berserk and he himself became insane? Suddenly, a thought popped up in her head. She had heard that when one's cultivation goes berserk, one would start to do many abnormal actions. Could it be that flipping through books non-stop here be one of this kind of abnormal actions? She was looking at the young man with a bizarre expression as she started to think that the young man was abnormal when she noticed that Zhang Xuan stopping in his actions after flipping through the books in the final row. So much knowledge. After a consecutive 6 to 7 hours of hard work, he had finally imprinted all of the books in Hongton Academy's Teacher Compendium Pavilion in the Library of Heaven's Path in his head. Through the compilation of flaws and strengths from the Library of Heaven's Path towards each individual book, he gained a certain level of understanding towards the cultivation technique, battle technique, pills, equipment forging, formations, and such. With Zhao Ya's pure yin body, she should cultivate this manual. However, before that, I have to do some preparations. After imprinting the entire Compendium Pavilion, he finally understood how he should solve the problem with Zhao Ya's physical body. He couldn't resist heaving a breath of relief. He had even found out the loopholes and incomplete portions in the previous 3 dan of his cultivation. As long as he found some time to recultivate through them, he could correct and perfect them. Goo goo goo. When he was finally finished, he felt an ache in his stomach. After working for such a long period of time, his hunger pangs had already long struck, just that he was oblivious to it then. Shaking his head, he started to walk towards the exit of the Compendium Pavilion. However, he had only taken a few steps when he saw Shenbi Ru standing before him, looking at him with a cold gaze. To think that this woman would still be here after he had flipped through the books for 6 to 7 hours. Couldn't be bothered with such a self-important fellow. Zhang Xuan continued walking towards the exit of the Compendium Pavilion. Stop it right there! When he has just walked through the exit, he heard Elder Mo bellowing at him. At this very instant, Elder Mo's face darkened to the point that it seemed like the coalescence of numerous storm clouds ready to explode at any moment. He had tolerated this young man for too long. At this moment, there was only a single thought in his head. Troublemaker, troublemaker, and troublemaker, Elder Mo. Zhang Xuan looked at him with a puzzled expression. Zhang Xuan Laoshi. Elder Mo's face was cold. With an intentionally harsher tone, he said, You came to the Compendium Pavilion not to study, but to intentionally cause trouble. From now on, the Compendium Pavilion no longer welcomes you. If you step in here once more, I will break your legs. Causing trouble? Elder Mo, where did all these come from? I have been looking through the books seriously. How did I become a troublemaker? Although he had already duplicated an identical Compendium Pavilion in his head and no longer had to come here, he still felt displeased upon hearing those words. Why is it that when other people are here, you think of them as studying, but when I am here, you think of me as a troublemaker? What kind of logic is this? Aren't you being too unreasonable? Shenbiru's shock. Reading seriously? A wind tugged on Elder Mo's beard, and his face looked so red that it might explode at any moment. Not jotting down notes to decipher its content and simply flipping the books randomly. Tell me, who reads the way you do? Must reading involve jotting down notes to decipher its contents? Only now did Zhang Xuan understand why the other party was so mad. He was at a loss to respond. In his previous life, he was a librarian, and his job scope was similar to that of Elder Mo's. However, back then, as long as one held a borrowing pass, he would be able to enter the premises and no one would bother whether he was eating or drinking inside. As long as one didn't kill someone or set the place on fire, he was basically free to do as he pleased. Initially, he thought that Elder Mo was making things difficult for him due to his previous self's astounding results at the teacher qualification examination. After such a farce, but the reason ended up to be just this. These books are obtained through the relentless efforts of the Academy's predecessor, and every single one of them is the product of their blood, sweat, and tears. If you are not here to study, then don't touch them. Flipping through them the way you do, what can you be doing other than creating trouble? Elder Mo flung his hands in anger. Fine. If you insist that I'm creating trouble, then just take it to be so. Zhang Xuan wanted to explain, but after thinking it through for a moment, he shook his head and decided otherwise. The matter with the Library of Heaven's path must not be revealed. This also meant that he would be unable to explain his actions of flipping through those books frenziedly. Since he won't be here in the future anyway, there was no need for him to clarify it. Besides, his reputation was already as bad as it is. It didn't matter whether it was sullied further or not. At least you're willing to admit to it. Now scram! Upon his admittance, intense loathing could be seen in Elder Mo's eyes. He waved his hands, gesturing him to leave. I'll be taking my leave. Just as he was about to leave, a pleasant aroma surged into his surroundings, and a figure appeared before him. Blocking his path, Shenbi-Ru said, "Wait a minute." "What is it now?" Zhang Xuan looked at her helplessly. "You read your own book while I read mine. Surely I didn't bother you then." Normally, when she stopped someone else, the other party would be leaping in joy. Yet this fellow looked at her with an annoyed expression. Shen-Bi-Ru frowned. "It isn't about that. Didn't you say that you were reading books in there? After reading for such a long period, surely you would remember some of its contents." "What do you mean?" Not sure what kind of tricks this woman was playing now. Zhang Xuan stared at her doubtfully. "It's simple. I noticed that you read 8 Methods of Pill Refinement. It just happens that there are some parts of it that I am unable to comprehend, so I would like to consult you on it. Surely you won't reject my request?" Shenbi-Ru asked. Actually, her plan was simple. Wasn't this fellow before her putting on an act by flipping through all those books? Thus, if she questioned him on the book and he was unable to answer her queries, his lie would be exposed. 8 Methods of Pill Refinement? Zhang Xuan's consciousness jolted as the book appeared in his mind. Indeed, he had flipped through this book previously. "If there's anything you're unsure of, feel free to ask and I will answer your queries. However, I have to eat soon and don't have much time to spare, so do hurry up. You..." Clenching her fist tightly, Shenbi-Ru almost fainted from anger. His tone is as though a frustrated teacher answering the questions of a student seeking clarification. "Firstly, I am a beauty. Secondly, I am a high-level teacher and one of the popular teachers of the school. If I ask you a question, it is obvious that I am testing your standards. Why does it sound like I am learning from you? Everyone has a field of specialty that expertise in, so teachers in the academy often consult one another to learn from each other. However, as a fellow who scored 0 in the teacher qualification examination, what makes you think that you are qualified for me to be consulting you?" Suppressing the rage within her that was on the verge of erupting, Shenbi-Ru grinded her teeth. "Just a moment ago, I read a phrase in the book. If the herbs scatter, it would be difficult for the pill to form. If the herbs agglutinate, a yellow pill will form. I find these words a little bizarre and incomprehensible. Can Zhang Laoshi clarify its meaning for me?" When she said the word clarify, her teeth almost shattered from the intense force between them, and the sound of its grinding was clear to hear. As a great beauty, if it wasn't to embarrass him, she would never seek guidance from a trash. "You still want to ask questions despite that memory of yours." He didn't expect the other party to ask such a question. He pursed his lips and replied, "The phrase should be, if the herbs agglutinate, it would be difficult for the pill to form. If the herbs scatter, a yellow pill will form." Its meaning is simple. When refining a pill, the moment that the herbal fluid or powder clumps together, it would be impossible to meld their medical properties together. On the other hand, if they are separated and mixed together thoroughly, the pill that would be formed will look like the yellows of an egg. After flipping through all of the books in the compendium pavilion, he was able to retrieve the correct method for the refinement of the pill with just a jolt of his consciousness. She might be able to stump others with such a question, but directing it towards him? What a joke! What's worse was that she even recited the question wrongly. Her standard was too subpar. How, you can't reply it, can you? What did you say? She thought that the young man would be unable to reply her question. Not even in her dreams would she fathom that Zhang Xuan would be able to answer the question so casually. Unprepared for such a twist, Shenbi Ru was dumbfounded, her beautiful eyes almost popping out of their sockets. She intentionally recited the phrase wrongly so that he would offer the wrong guidance. In her viewpoint, this fellow was just making up a show in the compendium pavilion, not absorbing the slightest bit of knowledge in those books at all. If she were to casually whip out the contents of a book, he would be foreign to them. Thus, she recited it inaccurately, so that he would make a fool of himself. Who knew that? He would see through her inaccurate reciting, and even offered the most correct answer. How is this possible? Could it be that this fellow has really remembered the entirety of 8 methods of pill refinement just by flipping through it? But that's impossible. He is a fellow who scored 0 in the teacher qualification examination. How could he possibly be knowledgeable in something as unconventional as pill refining? All right. Do you have any other questions? Stroking his shriveled stomach, Zhang Xuan hurried her. I still have more. Despite the overwhelming shock, upon seeing the impassive look on his face, Shenbi Ru immediately recovered and posed another question. There is another phrase that I don't understand. When refining a metal in flames, never meld them when it is impure. After finishing her words, she smiled coldly as she awaited for the stumped look on the other party. The question she asked previously was on pill refinement, while this one was a dictum on weapon forging. This was a phrase she saw on an ancient book. She was unable to understand the saying, even after analyzing it for a month. In the end, she only managed to clarify it after consulting a master blacksmith. Initially, she only wanted to embarrass the other party to let him know the price of offending her. Yet, she didn't expect him to be able to explain the meaning of the words in the 8 methods of pill refinement. This provoked the competitive spirit within her, inducing her to come up with a difficult question to leave him speechless. This? Standing by the side, Elder Mo was surprised when Zhang Xuan was able to answer the first question. Even so, he wasn't particularly shocked. 8 Methods of Pill Refinement was a basic manual that innumerable rookie apothecaries would have to learn, similar to what Hong Tian 9 Dan formula was to cultivators. Even if one didn't learn pill refinement, it wasn't peculiar for them to know a thing or two about it. When Shenbi Ru asked the second question, he was stunned. That's because even he found it hard to decipher the meaning of these words. When refining a metal in flames, never meld them when it is impure. Just when the two of them thought that he would be incapable of answering, Zhang Xuan shook his head and looks at Shenbi Ru as though he was looking at an idiot. What is so hard to comprehend about these words? It just means that when forging weapons, one must first refine the respective materials in fire to thoroughly clear away all impurities. Only then can the weapon be melded together more effectively. May I trouble you to ask some harder questions? This basic knowledge can be grasped easily after reading more books. Shenbiru's slim body jolted. She had to consult many different people before she got an answer to this question of hers. Yet, this young man managed to point out the crux of the dictum instantly. Not just her, even Elder Mo almost fainted from astonishment. For Zhang Xuan to answer a question he didn't know the answer to, could it be that he was studying seriously when he was flipping through all those books? Zhang Xuan Laoshi. Your answer seems to be incorrect, though. I remember that there is an explanation of it on Discussions of Miscellaneous Disputes, which is different from what you claim. It states that if one wants to add metal material to a pill, one would have to refine it first, otherwise it would not coagulate as one. In a state of disbelief, Elder Mo spoke up. You remembered it wrongly. There isn't such a phrase in Discussions of Miscellaneous Disputes. Neither there is anything of that sort written in it. The one you read must be Discussion of miscellaneous theories written by Senior Liu Ze. There is a phrase similar to it in there, but what is written is, when refining a metal along with a pill, never mix them when it is impure, and not refining a metal in flames. Zhang Xuan waved his hand majestically. He wasn't aware that the both of them were testing him. He truly thought that the both of them couldn't remember the contents clearly, and thus, he casually continued. Oh, this book is at the corner of the 9th row in the Compendium Pavilion. The words that you just said are recorded on the 49th page. As for the question Shen Laoshi just asked, if you hold doubts about my explanation, you can browse through 3 Arts of Firecrafting left behind by Senior Duku. It is by the corner of the 15th bookshelf, and the explanation of it is written on the 24th page. Let me take a look. Shen Biru looked at him with doubtful eyes. She hurriedly rushed back into the Compendium Pavilion, and in a short moment, she came back with 2 books in her hand. Discussion of Miscellaneous Theories and 3 Arts of Firecrafting. Flipping to the page that the latter said, she staggered and almost passed out on the spot. To think that it would be identical to what Zhang Xuan said, there is not even a single discrepancy. Not only did he remember the contents of the book, he could even point out which book it came from, its location, and even the page number. Is this for real? Grabbing hold of the book from Shen Biru, Elder Mo took a glance at it and his entire body trembled. This should be impossible. All right. Is there still anything you are unsure of that you would like to consult? If not, I'll be leaving. Zhang Xuan looked at them with puzzlement reflecting on his face. Are these 2 fellows sick? If they wanted to consult him, they should have come up with some harder questions. Yet they chose to ask those that have been answered within the books. He didn't even have to churn his brain to derive out an answer for them. How boring. To think that one of them is a librarian and an expert, while the other one is a reputable and popular teacher. Pui. To be unable to match up to a transcender like me, they are truly lacking in knowledge. If you don't mind, I have another question that has been plaguing me. How would you interpret circulating a cycle of qi, reflecting the sight of 10,000 creations? Suppressing the disbelief in his mind, Elder Mo continued to ask. Another elder has raised this question with him a few days ago. After being stumped by it, he had been scavenging the Compendium Pavilion to seek an answer to it, but to no avail. Thus, he could only depart from the library dispirited. Now that the young lad before him had answered several questions, he couldn't resist bringing it up to him. You don't even know that? Zhang Xuan looked at him, and he knows he was looking at an idiot. That is the utmost basics of cultivation, all right? It refers to the phenomenon where while one's qi is circulating through one's body in a complete cycle, one's mind would seem to be in a state of wandering around the entire world as they comprehend the rules behind creationism. These words are recorded in Senior Bai Ming's Theories of Blood and Qi. The book is on the 27th shelf, and the explanation is on the 69th page. Circulating a cycle of qi, reflecting the sight of 10,000 creations. This was one of the few flawless teachings that were in the Fighter 1 Dan cultivation technique manuals, thus it left quite an impression with Zhang Xuan. It happened that a predecessor of Hongtian Academy had once deciphered it, so he paid additional notice to it. Why would an elder, who is the sentinel of the compendium library, need to direct such an easy question towards him? Elder Mo didn't reply to his words immediately, and instead, just like Shen Biru, walked into the Compendium Pavilion hurriedly. A short moment later, he found the book titled Theories of Blood and Qi, and flipped it over to the 69th page. His body staggered. It was exactly as he described. A few days ago, that elder flipped through many different secret manuals, but couldn't find an answer to his question. Never in his dreams would he have imagined that it would be recorded in an obscure book. Such an obscure book. To think that he would have read it, to the extent of even remembering. The pages? Elder Mo felt the world spinning around him, and everything seemed so ludicrous to him in this instant. If it wasn't for his consideration for his image, he might be tugging on the ends of his hair at this moment. A moment ago, he accused the other party of causing trouble in the library. In the end, not only was he reading books properly, he even memorized the contents contained within it. He felt a fiery sting on his face and fervently wished for a burrow to appear so that he could hide in it. Was he really the same teacher who scored a 0 in the teacher qualification examination? If Zhang Xuan could be the last with such a level of knowledge, didn't this mean that he wasn't even qualified to get 0 marks? All right. In the future, read more books. The answers to the questions that you have posed are all recorded in them. Seeing their stunned expressions, Zhang Xuan lectured them in a deep tone. Then, he shook his head and said, "If there's nothing else, I'll be leaving." After saying those words, he lifted his legs to walk away. He was simply way too hungry. If he didn't get food anytime soon, he might really faint from starvation. "Zhang Xuan Laoshi, wait for me." Only now did Shen Biru recover from her shock, and she swiftly caught up with Zhang Xuan. "What else do you want?" Zhang Xuan said in a slightly annoyed tone. "Is this woman sick or something? I had already clarified your queries for you. Are you done yet? Can't you see that I am hungry and would like to eat?" "I have yet to eat as well. Do you want to share a meal with me?" Shen Biru gritted her teeth. She was the Aphrodite of the academy. Many men had asked her out for a meal, only to be rejected by her. She had not even accepted a single one of the innumerable meal dates from Shangbin. The shock that this young man generated in her today made her curious about him. Thus she decided to ask him out, so as to make use of the opportunity to see what it was that caused the changes in him. "You want me to treat you?" Zhang Xuan looked at her with a bizarre expression. "What are you thinking of? If you want to eat, use your own money. How can one's skin be so thick?" "You had questions for me, so I answered them for you. You still expect me to treat you after that? How can you be so shameless?" In his previous life, he had researched numerous action films, but even so, he was a true shut-in. He had never truly come in contact with the opposite gender before, so how could he understand the thoughts of a lady? Seeing the gaze of the young man and hearing his words, Shen Biru almost shot out a mouthful of blood and fainted. "I am a beautiful lady, all right? Beautiful ladies have special privileges. So many people had invited me out, and I turned down every single one of them. Yet, when I ask you out, you look at me as though I am a monster. Shameless? Shameless your head. Is there anyone in the world who would term a beautiful lady as such?" The lady was on the verge of going berserk. "Fine, I'll treat you, okay? I'll treat you." Grinding her silver teeth together, Shen Biru spat out these words. "You treat me?" Zhang Xuan paused for a moment. Due to his previous self being the worst teacher in the academy, his income was nearly negligible. As such, it wasn't a bad thing to have someone treat him. Thus, he nodded his head. "It's fine with me, but I want a luxurious meal. I won't eat just any ordinary mantusum and fried pancakes." Rue went berserk again. "Mantu and fried pancakes? The heck with it. Let's go." She didn't want to say anything anymore. She's afraid that if she continued talking to him, she would die from anger. The Library of Heaven's Path allowed him to see through the flaws of all skills and everyone's Mingmen. However, it was unable to peer into the heart of a lady. Zhang Xuan was oblivious to the fact that he had made Hongtian Academy's #1 beauty furious to the point of vomiting blood with just a few simple words of his. Following behind Shen Biru, Zhang Xuan walked along the pavement towards the entrance of the campus. Although the night scenery at Hongtian Academy wasn't as radiant as the school in his previous life, it was still quite an exquisite sight under the illumination of the moon. Shrouded by spirit energy, the atmosphere seemed exceptionally tranquil and peaceful. In his previous life, he was surrounded by hubble bubble and smog could be found everywhere. It was very different from the serenity one could experience here. Zhang Xuan subconsciously immersed himself in this enchanting scenery. Walking in front, Shen Biru thought that the young man following behind her would intentionally ask some questions to break the awkward silence. However, after the absence of sound for a long period of time, she couldn't resist turning around to take a look. Sneaking a glance, she was taken aback. The young man walked quietly as the moonlight illuminated his figure, the image of it reminiscent of a serene painting. This will of mine too, Dan, heart of tranquil water? Her eyes narrowed. Fighters didn't just cultivate their genki and physical body. What was even more crucial to them was their mind. The stronger one's mind was, the greater control they have over their cultivation. As a result, one's cultivation could surge even more swiftly, thus allowing them to reach greater heights in the future. That's precisely the reason why experts classified the will of mind into many different levels. Heart of Tranquil Water was the second Dan realm of it. The mind was harder to train than battle techniques. It was said that of the entire academy, only the principal had reached such a level. Even Shen Biru, who was reputed to possess unparalleled talents and had reached Fighter 5 Dan Pinnacle by the age of 20, second only to the renowned young genius Bai Wangi, too, was still a long way away from Will of Mine 2 Dan. Initially, she thought that it would be too difficult for a second person to reach such a level. But never in her dreams would she dare to think that the trash teacher in the mouths of others would actually reach such heights. If not for the fact that she witnessed it personally, she would never believe it. How is this possible? That is Will of Mind 2 Dan. It is a height harder to climb to than Fighter 6 Dan 7 Dan. Could it be that he isn't a trash at all, but he intentionally scored a 0 in the teacher qualification examination, so as to make use of the insults and derision of others to temper his will? Suddenly, a peculiar thought popped up in her mind. In the past, she didn't have much contact with Zhang Xuan Laoshi, so she wasn't really aware of his affairs. Today, through their conversation, she realized that he was not only knowledgeable, he had even reached Will of Mine 2 Dan Heart of Tranquil Water. That was a level many dream about, but never achieved in their lifetime. Looks like his teacher qualification examination results were all feigned. His true goal was to make use of the scorn of others to train his mind, so as to break into the Will of Mind 2 Dan. She found it unbelievable that a person with such will of mind would be unable to achieve a pass in the simple teacher qualification examination. Continue putting on an act. See how I'll expose you. Thinking about how she was duped by this fellow, she gritted her silver teeth tightly. This fellow was simply too hateful. She was resolute to look for a chance to expose him before others. Mantu. Bun. Basically, he means he won't just eat street food from vendors by the street. Wangai is a title granted from the emperor to princes of the country. Heart of Tranquil Water. Very quickly, Zhang Xuan's consciousness returned from a mystical spiritual world, and his eyes lit up. Having read so many books, it was natural that he would understand the significance of the will of mind. I am a transcender. Having experienced life and death, it is natural that my will would be stronger than most. Furthermore, I cultivate in heaven's path divine art, so my genchi is as pure as clear water. It is normal to reach Will of Mine 2 Dan so quickly. He was overjoyed over it, but it didn't come as a surprise. If he were to still be like the other ordinary folks when he possessed the godly tool named Library of Heaven's Path, he might as well buy a blob of tofu and commit suicide on it. Remaining silent the entire way, they soon arrived at the entrance of the academy. Hongtian Pavilion. Seeing the two enormous words before him, Zhang Xuan nodded his head. There are recollections of this tavern in the memories of his previous self. Hongtian Pavilion was the most luxurious tavern in Hongtian Academy. Every single meal here would blow a hole in one's wallet. Due to his meager pay, his previous self had never been here before. Initially, he thought that Shen Biru would just bring him to some casual restaurant. He never thought that she would be so generous to bring him here. As expected of a renowned tavern. The furnishings inside were majestic. Numerous night illumination pearls of the size of a fist were embedded within the walls of the tavern, making it seem as though it was still daytime. They sat down at a table beside the windows. "What would you like?" Shen. Biru gazed at the young man before her. "Anything," Zhang Xuan gestured. "Since you're the one treating, I will eat anything that you order." Never been here before, he didn't know what dishes were good here. Since someone else was paying, he couldn't be bothered to think about it. Seeing the expression of the young man, which seemed resolute to take advantage of her wealth, Shen Biru felt her rage welling up. However, as this wasn't a good situation for her to flare up, she could only nod her head and casually order a few dishes. "Zhang Laoshi, was the 0 in your teacher qualification examination intentional?" After ordering, Shen Biru stared at the young man before her, fixedly. Intentional? Unsure of why the latter would ask such a question, Zhang Xuan paused for a moment before replying, "Of course not." Back then, during the period of the teacher qualification examination, he had yet to transcend over, and his previous self didn't possess the Library of Heaven's path either. Thus, it was impossible for the results to just be an act. Knowing that he would deny it, Shen Biru laughed coldly in her mind. "Denying it? See how I will expose your true colors. Since we're free now, I happen to have some questions that I have been unable to answer. Zhang Laoshi, would you mind helping me clarify my doubts?" An idea flashed through Shen Biru's mind and she asked, "Go ahead." Since the other party was treating him to a meal, he should answer a question or two of hers in return. "All right. If one is unable to gather spirit energy in their meridians while cultivating..." Shen B. Ru pondered for a moment before asking a question. "You don't know this as well?" Hearing that the question was even simpler than the ones from before, Zhang Xuan stared at the other party in bewilderment before casually explaining, "I have 9 methods here that can solve the problem." Soon, he finished his explanation. 9 methods. Hearing how the young man casually threw out 9 methods at her, Shen Biru's face warped. Despite being knowledgeable, she was only aware of 3 methods, yet the other party was able to list out 9 in a single breath. Furthermore, there were a few in the mix that were completely foreign to her. She found the entire situation inconceivable. Then, what if one is unable to guide the flow of spirit energy into the meridians after absorbing it into one's body? Forcefully suppressing her astonishment, she asked once more. "That is simple too. I have 8 ways of resolving that." Zhang Xuan started to explain. Firstly, Shen Biru's slim body trembled. She had prepared herself mentally for this, but she still found the situation insane. The methods he brought up are incredible. If these were to spread out, it would cause an uproar in the world of cultivation. Since you know so many methods, why weren't you able to list a single one of them out during the teacher qualification examination and instead scored a 0? Forcibly suppressing her shock, Shen Biru asked. The 2 questions that she just raised were the exact same questions listed in the previous teacher qualification examination. Since he was aware of so many solutions, why couldn't he fill them in? Not to mention, to end up with a 0. Kang? Only now did Zhang Xuan come to a realization. So these questions were from the teacher qualification examinations. As it was part of the memories of his previous self, although he found the questions familiar, he wasn't able to pinpoint exactly where he saw them. Just as he is stumped for an answer, the dishes that were ordered previously were placed on the table, one after another. "Let's eat first." Looking at the appearance of the dishes and taking in their fragrance, Zhang Xuan's appetite was whetted up. Couldn't be bothered with these troublesome matters, he started to dig in. Pah. Seeing how that fellow was more delighted to see those delicacies than her, Shenbi-ru pouted. Countless people had invited her out for a meal, using all kinds of reasons and excuses just to stay with her a moment longer. Yet, this fellow was here just for the meal itself. Shang Xiaoye, don't be angry anymore. I have applied for the Enlightenment Will trial, and the Academy will bring Liu Yang over for inspection tomorrow. Zhang Xuan would definitely be severely punished. As for that lunatic, Elder Shang has already lent you his beloved pet. When you meet him tomorrow, you will surely be able to give him an unforgettable lesson, so you should be overjoyed instead. Let's go. I'll treat you to a grand meal to make up for the sufferings you underwent today. After which, we will find a few girls and... He. Xiaoye, young master. Two young men were walking along the pavement of the academy. The one leading in front had a swollen and bruised face with clear panda eyes. It was apparent to see that he had fought with someone and got hit on the face. The one following behind him had his body bent forward and was assuming a subservient attitude. The one who was speaking at the moment was the latter. There was a giant lion strutting proudly behind the two of them. Emanating a ferocious aura, it induced great pressure and fear in one before one could even approach it. They were Shangbin, who created trouble in the classroom earlier in the morning, only to be beaten up by Yao Han and Chao Xiong, who was desperate to get Zhang Xuan into deep trouble. As for the lion behind them, it was Elder Shang Chen's beloved pet, the Tier 6 savage beast, sky-shattering lion. In this world, there were apothecary, blacksmith, and many other occupations. Every single occupation was noble in its own right and well respected by the others. Of these occupations, Elder Shang Chen was a beast tamer. This occupation allowed one to tame savage beasts and spirit beasts and control them, turning them into a part of one's fighting prowess. It was a formidable occupation that was noteworthy compared to the rest. This sky-shattering lion was a beast pet that Elder Shang Chen had trained. After being done in by the berserk Yao Han, he was aware that he was unable to match up to him in terms of strength. Thus, he approached his grandfather to borrow a beast pet for his usage. Hearing those fawning words, Shangbin nodded his head as he spat with an aggressive expression. That Yao Han must be taught a good lesson, Zhang Xuan as well. Of course. With this sky-shattering lion, what does Shang Xiaoye has to fear? Chao Xiong chuckled. A Tier 6 savage beast was equivalent to a Fighter 6 Dan expert, perhaps even surpassing them slightly. Even if that berserk butler Yao Han wasn't weak, it wouldn't be an easy feat for him to defeat the sky-shattering lion even in his top form, needless to say, in his current state. Earlier in the day, he was wrapped up like a mummy, not any better than Shang Xiaoye's current situation. Sky-shattering lion is my grandfather's beast pet. You are also aware of its wild nature, which makes it as a difficult pet to tame. Grandfather may have handed him over to me, but it would only make a move when someone attacks me. Currently, I am still incapable of ordering it around. Looking at the ferocious and mighty sky-shattering lion behind him, Shangbin felt a little helpless. Savage beasts might be strong, but they were very proud life forms. Unless one was stronger than them or had the occupation of a beast tamer, it was impossible to make them listen to one's orders willingly. That may not be necessarily so. If we entertain it with good alcohol and food, it might just listen to your commands. Cao Xiong smiled. Let's hope that it'll be like that. In the midst of their strolling and chattering, a massive tavern soon appeared before them. We're here! A magnificent signboard sat behind them as they walked into the tavern. Hongtian Pavilion. Shang Gongzi, you're here. Come on in. Before the two men and one beast stepped into the tavern, a smiling middle-aged man welcomed them with a smile. The manager of Hongtian Pavilion, Wu Chou, give us a quiet location. Chao Xiong Laoshi and I want to have a good drink together, Shang Bin said. Over here. Wu Chou quickly brought them to their seats. Shang Xiaoye, Every time I am here, this Wucho would behave smugly and disregard my presence. This time, why does he? Cao Xiong couldn't resist asking. Hongtian Pavilion might just be a tavern, but the powers backing it was not one to scoff at. Otherwise, it was impossible for them to be operating their business in the compounds of Hongtian Academy at such a scale. In the past, when he was here to eat, Manager Wu would always disregard him. Yet, this time, his back was bent forward and his attitude was of utmost respect. The disparity in his attitudes made him doubt if he was in reality. You should have heard of that there was once an elder Hong Hao in the academy, Shangbin said. Cao Xiong nodded his head. Hongtian Academy was founded by Hongtian. After his death, his descendants sustained his heritage. As a result, the elders who have the surname of Hong tended to be of more esteemed standing in the academy. He had heard of this elder Hong Hao previously. He was an extremely powerful individual and had once vied for the principal seat. However, afterward, for some unknown reasons, he suddenly resigned from his position as an elder, and there was no news on him anymore. After resigning as an elder, he started a tavern. He used to be best buddies with my grandfather, so Manager Wu would welcome me with respect whenever I'm here, Shangbin declared gleefully. So that's the reason. Cao Xiong nodded his head. No wonder this Hongtian Pavilion managed to grow to such a scale. It was opened by the previous elder Hong Hao. To be received by the manager of such a huge tavern, it is definitely something glorious. Just as he was in the midst of enjoying service he had never experienced before, Cao Xiong suddenly froze, and his face gradually grew darker. What happened? Shangbin gazed at him in puzzlement. That should be Zhang Xuan, right? How could he possibly have the qualifications to be dining here? Cao Xiong pointed towards a table by the window. Zhang Xuan? Shangbin glanced over as well. Upon seeing the young man, he caught sight of the figure seated together with him. His eyebrows shot upwards and rage surged from within. Why is she together with that trash? I had extended my invitation to her multiple times, but she kept rejecting me. To think that she would be dining with someone else. Damn it! Damn it! As the grandson of an elder, a high-level teacher of the academy and a Fighter 5 Dan Dingley realm expert, he had invited Shenbi Ru for a meal multiple times, but she never agreed. Initially, he thought that she would never eat together with anyone. Never would he imagine that she would be sitting together with the renowned trash of the academy. He almost fainted from anger on the spot. Slamming his table, he stood up, preparing to rush over to question her. However, he suddenly recalled Shenbi Ru's temperament and immediately shriveled back to his seat. She held intense loath to those who disturb her. If he were to rush over to interrogate her like this, if she ended up getting provoked by his attitude and raged out at him, there would be no hope for his courtship. Shang Xiaoye, don't be angry. I have an idea that would reveal the true colors of Zhang Xuan before Shen Laoshi. Furthermore, it can accentuate the majestic aura of Shang Xiaoye. Cao Xiong was a social expert, allowing him to see through the current situation in an instant. An idea flashed through his mind, and he smiled as he tried to coax Shangbin into action. What idea? This Zhang Xuan is definitely here to fawn on Shen Laoshi by treating her to a meal. However, as a low-level teacher, how much money could he possibly earn? We only have to interfere slightly to make the final bill out of his reach to shame him before her. Afterwards, Shang Xiaoye would appear and rescue her from the awkward situation. Shen Laoshi's impression of Shang Xiaoye would definitely improve. Perhaps the flower of love might even bloom as she runs into your embrace. Cao Xiong revealed his plan. Good. Let's do it your way then. Shangbin's eyes lit up as he nodded his head in satisfaction. Not only would he be able to cripple his opponent, he would also be able to elevate his position in Shenbi Ru's heart at the same time. This was truly a brilliant idea. Looks like this Cao Xiong isn't simply capable at teaching, he also has a way with dealing with humans. Looks like he should be properly groomed in the future. Zhang Xuan didn't know of the scheme that was being plotted against him. Eating the delicacies on the table, he nodded his head in commendation. The cooking techniques here might not be as refined as the ones on Earth, but this world was rich in spirit energy, not to mention that the ingredients used in the dishes were fresh and delicious, thus providing a wholly different enjoyable eating experience. Soon, most of the dishes on the table had been cleaned up, and a large portion of them was wiped clean by Zhang Xuan. Shen Biru only nibbled on a small bit of them symbolically. Seeing how this fellow was only obsessed with eating, disregarding even her presence, Shen Biru curled her lips in anger. Initially, she thought that he was feigning it to attract her attention. Only now did she realize that he had never thought of her as an important matter. Regardless of whether it was the genius teachers or star teachers of the academy, they would intentionally fawn on her and offer her favors. Yet this fellow, the worst-ranking teacher of the entire academy, treated her as though she is nothing, making her grind her silver teeth in anger. If it wasn't for her etiquette, she would have already sent both of her legs flying towards his body. The more she thought about it, the more furious she got. She knew that if she were to see him continue eating, she would die of anger. She turned around and called out to the waiter, "Bill!" A total of 1,280 gold coins. A waiter walked over. 1,280? Shen Biru froze in shock. Why is it so expensive? Even for a high-level teacher like her, she only earned 1,000 gold coins every month. Yet to eat away a month of salary in a single meal, how could it be so expensive? She had calculated it properly while she was ordering the dishes, and the bill wasn't supposed to even reach 100. How could it jump up to more than 1,000 in an instant? I'm sorry, but this bottle of wine here costs 1,200 gold coins by itself, the waiter explained. Previously, when the both of them were eating, a waiter came forth to ask if they wanted some wine. Shen B. Rue thought that it would be fine to have some alcohol, so she nodded her head in agreement. How could she have possibly imagined that the wine would be that expensive? We were uninformed of the price of the wine you sent over. Shen Biru's face looked extremely pale at this instant. No matter how foolish she could be, it was obvious that she had been had. If you are truly uninterested in it, you should have asked further about it beforehand. Since you didn't ask, we thought that you would be aware of its price, so we didn't say anything excessive. The waiter looked at her coldly. Humph. Seeing the attitude of the waiter, Shen Biru knew that there's no point in kicking up a fuss. Instead, it might be bad for her reputation if she were to kick up a fuss on this matter. Thus, she whipped out her wallet and prepared to pay. Then, her face suddenly turned white and awkwardness exuded from her. I don't have sufficient money on me now. Why don't you keep it on my tab first? I will repay you after retrieving sufficient money. Today, she only intended to accomplish some reading at the Compendium Pavilion, so she didn't bring much money. After which, she met Zhang Xuan and consulted him on some matters. Due to the excessive shock then, she totally forgot about the matter, recalling it only at this moment. She only had around 100 gold coins on her, far from the required 1,000 plus. Treating someone to a meal, yet not having sufficient money to foot the tab? She felt a fiery sting on her face as she fervently wished for a burrow to appear so that she could hide inside it. Don't order food that you can't afford. Since you've ordered it, pay up. Don't even dream about eating for free here. The waiter harumphed. You! Shen Biru's small face flushed in anger. What happened? At this moment, a stern voice sounded out. Shang Bin, accompanied by Chao Xiong and the sky-shattering lion, walked over proudly with widened strides. Dressed in white, his hands were behind him and his head was tilted high, his posture exuding an aura of superiority. In normal times, with his disposition and outer appearance, accompanied with the ferocious sky-shattering lion following behind him, he would have looked like an elegant and dashing gentleman. However, at this very moment, his face was swollen red and his eyes were bruised black. Looking from afar, he looked indescribably ridiculous. However, he seemed oblivious to it and instead strutted about proudly. With a deep look in his eyes and a distanced aura, he walked forward, and his eyes happened to chance upon Shen Bi-ru's body. Feigning shock, he said, "Shen Laoshi, what a coincidence. You're here as well?" He turned around to look at the waiter and asked, "What happened here? It is unbecoming to be making a ruckus here." "Ah, so it is Shang Xiao Oh yeah." The waiter leapt in fear. He no longer put on the pushy attitude from before, and instead revealed a careful demeanor as he explained, "It's like this. They had eaten, but they do not have the money to foot the bill." No money to foot the bill. Shangbin shook his head as a disappointed expression appeared on his face. He gazed at Zhang Xuan and said, "Zhang Laoshi, it is not that I want to lecture you, but if you do not have the money, don't try to feign generosity and treat someone to a meal here. Look, you simply ended up embarrassing yourself. As the worst teacher in the academy, you might be used to it, but to bring shame to Shen Laoshi as well, don't you think you have gone a bit too far?" Seeing the arrogant look on the face of the fellow before him, Zhang Xuan paused for a moment before turning around to look at Shen Bi-ru. "Sai, he seems to be talking about you. If you don't have sufficient money, don't feign generosity. Look, you simply ended up embarrassing yourself." "You..." Upon hearing Shangbin's words, Shen Bi-ru was already infuriated. Yet, to hear Zhang Xuan repeating the same words again, she almost exploded from all of the accumulated fury. She lifted her head and glared at the gleeful Shangbin, who was trying to put on an impressive image to win her favor. "Luo Luo," she grinded her jade teeth together and roared. "Shangbin, I dare you to say once more who the one feigning generosity is?" Gongzi gentleman, usually used to address for young males. "Ah?" Not expecting that the lady would be angered, Shangbin was astonished. He immediately explained, "Shen Laoshi, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about Zhang Xuan. If he doesn't have the money, he shouldn't be going around treating others. Look, he ended up getting stopped by the waiter. How embarrassing is that? He is sullying the prestige of our academy." The more he spoke, the darker his goddess's face turned, to the point that it seemed as though she would erupt at any moment now. Shang Bin was bewildered by the twist in the situation. At this moment, the waiter interrupted awkwardly, "Shang Xiaoye." "What?" Shang Bin glanced at him with a frown. "Cough, cough, the one that is treating is Shen Laoshi," the waiter said. He received the order to cooperate with Shangbin's show. Yet, he would have never expected that it would be the lady that had foot the tab. Before he could report it to him, Shangbin had already rushed over, making it even more difficult to explain the situation to him. Shen Laoshi is the one treating? Shangbin was horrified. His eyes widened in disbelief. "Are you for real?" He had been asking the goddess out to eat every day, and yet she simply dismissed his invitations. What rights did the worst teacher of the academy have to be sharing a meal with her, not to mention having her treat him? Why? Just because I have no money to foot the tab means I'm feigning generosity and embarrassing myself, is it? Shen Bi-ru glared at him coldly. She had been embarrassed in front of Zhang Xuan multiple times today, and she had been dispirited over it all this while. Yet, this fellow just had to mock her at such a moment. She felt her rage on the verge of flying out of control. No, that's not it. Shangbin's face paled and he looked as though he was about to cry. Only now did he understand that he had accidentally insulted his goddess in the midst of trying to fawn on her. He immediately waved his hands as though to dispel the misunderstanding. "I didn't mean that. I mean to... Stuttering, he was unsure of how he should explain it. However, as expected of a teacher of the academy and the grandson of an elder. Having experienced and seen many things, he quickly recovered and turned to look at the waiter. Gesturing majestically, he declared, "All right, Shen Laoshi's debt is my debt. How much does it cost? I will pay for her." "Shang Xiaoye, you are an esteemed guest of our Hongtian pavilion. How can we accept your money?" The waiter nodded his head in a panic. These were the lines they had prepared beforehand, so as to flaunt his background and ability before his goddess. That is great. Shangbin wanted to tug on the subject a while longer to showcase his superiority when Shenbiru's cold voice sounded out once more. It's okay, I will pay for my expenses so that others won't claim that I am feigning generosity. At this moment, she retrieved a hairpin from her head and passed it over. This jade hairpin is worth at least 5,000 gold coins. You can verify it with a specialist. I will be leaving it in your care first. After I retrieve my money, I will be back to redeem it. Holding the jade hairpin, the waiter was unsure of what he should do. This wasn't part of the script they agreed on. Shen Laoshi, you don't have to do this. I am acquainted with Manager Wu of Hongtian Pavilion, so as long as I speak up, that debt of yours don't mean anything at all. Shangbin hurriedly stepped forward. That's your problem. What does it have to do with me? Shenbiru interrupted his words. Then, she turned to look at the waiter again and said, I will be leaving first, if you aren't going to be looking for a specialist to verify it. The waiter looked at Shangbin in a panic, and the plea in his gaze was clear to see. What are you looking at me for? Shangbin waved his hand quickly. With a furious gaze, he continued, I don't know you at all. All right. Zhang Xuan didn't expect that a single meal would end in such a farce. Shaking his head, he stepped forward, retrieved the jade hairpin from the waiter, and passed it back to Shenbiru. Why are giving this to him? This meal isn't even worth 1,280 gold coins. Giving him money like this, are you that anxious to be scammed? Scammed? Hongtian Pavilion has nearly 10 years behind its establishment. Our prices are fair, and we do not discriminate between our customers. There has never been a single person who had such an issue with us before. So what do you mean by those words? The moment Zhang Xuan words landed, a middle-aged man walked over with large strides. It was the manager of Hongtian Pavilion, Wu Chou. He had talked it through with Shangbin, and he wasn't supposed to appear initially. However, upon hearing Zhang Xuan talking about a scam, he couldn't hold it in anymore. The events occurring here had attracted the attention of many customers. If he didn't show up and allow the other party to speak as he pleases instead, the reputation of the tavern would be sullied. If that happened, his boss, Elder Hong Hao, would kill him when he returned. What do I mean? Do I really have to voice it out? Zhang Xuan's eyelids lifted up slightly, and a lazy atmosphere emanated from him. We use the finest ingredients for every single dish of our Hongtian Pavilion so that they are served fresh and delicious. Our prices have also undergone the stringent checks of the Academy. If you aren't able to explain yourself, regardless of the fact of whether you are a teacher of the Academy or not, you don't have to dream about leaving here today. Manager Wu's face darkened. To a tavern, scamming one's customers was a very heavy sin to bear. If he didn't settle it now, Hongtian Pavilion could possibly go out of operation when such a reputation spread. He is truly courting death. Initially, he thought that Zhang Xuan would get away scot-free once again. However, seeing Zhang Xuan accuse Hongtian Pavilion of scamming its customer and offending Manager Wu, a glint flashed across Shangbin's eyes as he watched the situation gleefully. Manager Wu might seem like an amiable person with a good temper, but when the reputation of Hongtian Pavilion was on the line, he would be like a raging bull who didn't know the meaning of retreat. Looks like the fellow who was the first from the last in the Academy was in for a ride of misfortune. What is this fellow rambling about? Panic could be seen on Shenbiru's face. For Hongtian Pavilion to be opened in Hongtian Academy at such a tremendous scale, its backing is clear to see at a single glance. Yet, you dare to accuse them of scamming their customers in public. Aren't you asking for trouble? A large tavern like this values its reputation a lot. Since you requested for me to say it, then I will spare with the formalities. Despite the Wu Chou's threat, Zhang Xuan was unfazed. He walked up to the table and said, This, Violet Savage Bear Meat, going by your claims, is prepared by slaughtering a savage bear before soaking it in violet flowers for 3 days. This way, the exterior will be crispy while the interiors will be tender and the meat will be filled with fragrance. However, you all took it out for frying right after soaking it for just a day. Although the texture is still the same, the medical properties of the violet flower has yet to soak in, making it would be useless no matter how many of it one eats. As for this, Honghu mandarin fish, you all advertised it as wild mandarin fishes caught in Lake Hong. However, they are actually mandarin fishes that you all have been rearing in Yeluo Bay. It is easy to differentiate between the two. As wild mandarin fishes have to battle against their natural predators, Qinghe turtle. The fin of the tail of Honghu mandarin fishes tend to be tougher than those that are reared, and its tail would be significantly thicker as well. One only has to slightly look into the matter to know whether what I'm saying is true. As for this, clear sautéed nestled heart herb, the ingredients used isn't even nestled heart herb, but bitter heart herb. These two plants are actually one of a kind, just that they are cultivated under different conditions, thus the difference in their names. Nestled heartgrass grows beside the nests of savage beasts and is taken care by them. Their stems would tend to be thicker, and their nutrition value is significantly higher as well. Bitter heart herb grows in the wilderness and is extremely cheap. Its stem is thin, and its nutrition value is lower by a huge chunk. For the same plate of vegetable, the difference in their value is almost tenfold, completely different in comparison. Listing it as nestled heart herb, but cooking the dish using bitter heart herb, if this isn't a scam, what else could it be? Casually pointing to any dish, he was able to clearly point out the origin and flaws in it. Upon hearing those words, Manager Wu's earlier aggression faded as his face paled. As the manager of Hongtian Pavilion, he wasn't just involved in attending to the customers, he was also in charge of the affairs in the kitchen. Naturally, he was aware of the authenticity of the Zhangshan's words. Not only was he not speaking nonsense, his words were completely true. The boss wasn't aware of these things. For his own profit, Wu Chou discreetly got someone to switch them. Not even professional gourmets could tell the differences between Honghu mandarin fish, nestled heart herb, and their imitation, thus proving that the substitutes for these two were identical. How could this young man tell? Furthermore, for him to be completely spot on. Damn it! We specially came here from afar to try the authentic nestled heart herb, to think that it would be an imitation. Me too. I've heard that the Honghu mandarin fish is delicious, authentic, and fragrant. Thus, I specially made the journey here. How dare you all try to fool us? Refund, refund. To think that the #1 tavern of Hongtian Academy would resort to using imitations. Not to mention that I am a regular customer. I would have never imagined that it was all a scam. Zhang Xuan's words were unhurried and rational, with sufficient evidence to back up his claims. The crowd who was watching the show immediately burst into an uproar. Hongtian Pavilion could be considered a reputable tavern, even in the entire Tianshuan kingdom. Many of its specialties have attracted innumerable experts to make the journey. They would have never imagined that these were all fake. You! Nonsense! Seeing the crowd breaking out into a commotion, cold sweat dripped down from Manager Wu's forehead. He gritted his teeth and bellowed. He must not admit to it now. The moment he did, Hongtian Pavilion's reputation would be ruined, and his future will be gone with it as well. If only he knew that this teacher was a gourmet, he would have never agreed to Shang Bin's request, even if he was beaten to death. You are claiming that what I said was nonsense? Zhang Xuan glanced at him. Indeed. You said that these dishes are imitations, but you don't have evidence to back up your claim. Without evidence, your words are nonsense. Do you think that I wouldn't dare to have you arrested for the crime of slander? Manager Wu said ferociously. Evidence? You want evidence? Fine. Seeing how this fellow was adamant to push on, Zhang Xuan shook his head. Initially, he didn't want to pursue the matter any further. After all, Shenbi-ru was the one treating. So what doesn't matter to him how much the dishes cost. However, who knew that this fellow would stubbornly claim that he was slandering them? Since that was the case, Zhang Xuan was resolute to prevent him from getting away scot-free. I have already provided the evidence of the few dishes before. Everyone can inspect their food carefully based on the unique traits that I have just brought up. Of course, it's okay if he is reluctant to acknowledge it. After all, even if you all know all these, some gourmets will still find it difficult to distinguish between them, needless to say, the rest of you. However, Zhang Xuan surveyed the surroundings before casually lifting up the most expensive bottle of wine on the table up and declared, everyone would be able to easily discern the authenticity of this bottle of wine. Discern its authenticity, drunk immortal, is the specialty of Hongtian Pavilion. This is a fact known by everyone. Many people specially made the trip here just for the wine. Are you trying to say that the wine is fake as well? A customer couldn't resist asking. Indeed, drunk immortal is the trademark of Hongtian Pavilion, so surely it can't be faked. If this turns out to be an imitation as well, I doubt that there can be anything real in here. Another customer spoke up. The wine that was offered to Zhang Xuan's table previously was called Drunk Immortal, and its sale was exclusive to Hongtian Pavilion. The wine was rich, delicious, and had an exquisite fragrance. This wine played a crucial role to the current reputation and scale of Hongtian Pavilion. If even this wine turned out to be an imitation, that would be going way overboard. I've already said that it would be easy to discern it. As though he had expected the crowd to doubt his words, Zhang Xuan simply responded with a faint smile and raises the bottle. The words Drunk Immortal are written on the cover of the bottle. If this is truly the Drunk Immortal from Hundred Well Brewery, it would indeed be worth 1,200 gold coins. But it is a pity that the bottle is filled with Green Crag Brew from Purple Bamboo Gazebo. These two wines are similar in terms of their scent and their texture. However, the former is brewed using the valuable and rare rooted earthgrass and green cicada heartleaf, and it nourishes the body when drunk. On the other hand, if one drinks too much of the Green Crag Brew, the venom from the fallen floral grass would attack one's heart and lungs. Over time, the function of one's organs will deteriorate, causing one's cultivation to fall rapidly, thus ending their lives tragically. Using Green Crag Brew to imitate Fallen Immortal? I've heard of Green Crag Brew. If I remember correctly, its taste is similar with Fallen Immortal. I've always trusted in the quality of the goods of Hongtian Pavilion. I would have never imagined that they would fool their customers like that. This is a fraud. I will be reporting this to the Academy so that an investigation will be conducted. The customers who were watching the commotion, upon hearing that they have been scammed, cried out indignantly. Just because you said that it is Green Crag Brew doesn't mean that it would necessarily be it. Where's your evidence? Manager Wu squeezed out these words between his gritted teeth. Glancing at him, Zhang Xuan replied calmly, "Wine can be ignited with fire. I haven't touched much of the alcohol in it, so you can ignite this one. The true Fallen Immortal should exude an alluring fragrance, similar to lilies and musk. On the other hand, for Green Crag Brew, a charred odor would be released. All those who have noses should be able to discern between the two easily." Manager Wu's body went stiff. The other party's words were completely accurate. However, this method of distinguishing between the two wasn't very well known. Only the makers of Green Crag Brew and their vendors were aware of it. Even Wu Cho himself only heard of it coincidentally. How could this fellow know of this method as well? Actually, the wine given to other customers were all true Fallen Immortal. After all, this was the trademark specialty of the tavern. After hearing Shang Bin's plan, he intentionally passed this fake wine over to the young man, thinking that he would be unable to discern between the two, so that he would be able to make an earning out of this. In the end, not only was the other party aware of it, he was even able to state the method to distinguish between the two clearly. If Zhang Xuan were to prove himself right, it would be difficult to explain to everyone that what they're drinking was the authentic fallen immortal. Why? You don't dare to give it a try? Seeing the look of panic on the other person's face, Zhang Xuan smiled faintly. He casually turned the wine bottle over, allowing the wine to spill onto the floor. Then, he took out an ignitable paper roll and snapped his fingers. Xiong, xiong. When the wine on the floor came into contact with the flames, it lit up and instantaneously, a stinging odor assaulted the noses of the crowd, leaving them faint-headed. How pungent! This was what we were drinking? Hongtian Pavilion really doesn't respect their customers. For it to be so pungent, it must be poisonous. Refund, refund. I've been drinking your wine here for 3 years. Not only do I want you to return it all back to me, I want additional compensation as well. The entire tavern exploded into an uproar. Everyone rushed forward. What? What is happening? Cao Xiong and Shangbin felt like they were going mad by the sudden turn of events. They had specially set up this ploy to humiliate Zhang Xuan. In the end, not only was he not humiliated, he even managed to stand out instead. Instead, they were shamed like clowns. What is happening? What is happening, your head? By the side, Manager Wu had just barely kept his emotions in check, but upon hearing those words, he lost control and kicked them both. Peng, peng. He was a Fighter 6 Dan Pixu realm expert. Before the two of them could even react, the sight before them went dark, and they crashed onto the ground. A giant footprint was left on each of their faces. It was no wonder that Manager Wu would go berserk. If it weren't for these two fellows, such an incident would not have occurred. He could already foresee that not only would his career come to an end, he would also have to face the rage of Elder Hong Hao. After this incident, Hongtian Pavilion's reputation would definitely go into the gutters, and their business would no longer be as prosperous as before. The cause of this entire incident was him accepting the request of these two fellows to teach the lad, who was last in the teacher qualification examination, a lesson. How could it be possible for this lad to be the last? Even the first in the examinations couldn't possibly be so incredible. If only he knew in advance that this master had such powerful eyes of discernment. Not only would he have not caused Zhang Xuan any trouble, he would have been praying for him to not cause him any. Damn it! Looks like there isn't anyone free to collect money from us right now. Let's go. Seeing how the situation had descended into chaos, Zhang Xuan signaled to Shen. Bi Ru, who was still in a state of daze, and walked out of the tavern. Now that the problem had been settled, staying here would just result in more trouble. Thus, it would wiser for them to simply leave. Hun! Shen Bi Ru hurriedly caught up to him. Seeing the young man in front her eyes were filled with complex emotions. All along, she thought that he was a trash, an ignorant fellow who was the shame of the teaching community. After half a day of interaction, she realized that if he was a trash, then what was she? Didn't it mean that she was nothing at all? Gritting her teeth, she walked up. With disbelief still reflecting within her beautiful pitch-black eyes, she asked, "You seem to be quite knowledgeable about food. Could it be that you're a gourmet?" There were many occupations in this world, and gourmet was one of them. Gourmets were often born sensitive to taste, and their ability to discern flavors far exceeded ordinary humans. Their cultivation might not necessarily be high, but there were some hotels or taverns that would hire them at high salaries so as to ascertain the taste and effects of their ingredients. However, this occupation was one of the least esteemed ones and could only be considered one of the lower 9 paths. There were more than several thousands of occupations in the world. To better classify them, they were split into the upper 9 paths, middle 9 paths, and lower 9 paths. Apothecary, blacksmith, formation master, and similar jobs, which brought about benefits to battle techniques and one's cultivation, were considered as the conventional upper 9 paths. On the other hand, Gourmet could only be considered as an unorthodox occupation, thus being classified under the lower 9 paths. Going by Shenbi Ru's opinion, given how the young man was capable of pointing out the flaws in those dishes and wine, he had to be a gourmet. You can take it so. Zhang Xuan didn't explain. The Library of Heaven's Path did more than reflecting one's cultivation. As long as he had tried a dish, its flaws would be reflected in the library. With this, it was a simple task for him to take care of a small manager Wu. Thank you for your help today. Seeing the other party admit to it, Shenbi Ru thanked him. If it wasn't for this young man's ability to discern delicacies, it would be truly embarrassing for her today. It's nothing, Zhang Xuan waved his hand. You resolved the problem just a moment ago, so it can't be considered as my treat. I'll treat you again next time, Shenbi Ru said. Treat me again? Zhang Xuan pondered over it and shook his head. Better not. I still treasure my life. Eating with a beauty might be an enjoyable event, but he knew himself the best. Given his reputation, the other party might simply be speaking out of politeness, despite being repulsed by the idea. Not only so, he would have to suffer from the envy of others. If so, he would have to come up with ideas to deal with her pursuers. However, there were still many things that he needed to do at the moment, and he didn't have the leisure for such matters. Just when she thought that Zhang Xuan could speak normally, she heard those words and felt a blockade in her chest again, as the urge to go berserk surged through her. Many people had asked her out to eat, but she rejected them all. Yet, when she took the initiative to invite him, she felt as though she was begging a stubborn elderly. Detestable. All right, since we have already eaten, if there's nothing else, I'll be making a move first. I still have many things to attend to. Oblivious to her rage, he waved and prepared to take his leave. Wait, I'm not done yet. Suppressing her anger, Shenbi Ru calmed down her breathing and looked at him with her beautiful eyes. You might have resolved that difficulty in my stead today, and your occupation as a gourmet played a huge role in it, but in the end, it is still an unorthodox occupation. After all, a fighter should focus on his training. Fighters, upon cultivating to a certain realm, were able to survive without ingesting food, so delicacies did not have much use. Even if he was able to profit out of the occupation for now, it still wasn't a proper path a fighter should be treading on. After interacting with him, she could tell that Zhang Xuan wasn't as useless as the rumors made him out to be. It could be possible that he had devoted his efforts to studying food. That's why his teacher qualification examination results ended up horrendous. Upon such thoughts, despite her overwhelming anger, she couldn't resist advising him. All right. Knowing that she said those words out of goodwill, Zhang Xuan nodded his head. Just as he was about to leave, rapid footsteps sounded out from his back. Zhang Xuan, let's see where you can escape to today. Today, don't even dream about getting away. Following which, a resentful voice echoed in the surroundings. 2 men and 1 beast blocked his path. They were Shang Bin and Chao Xiong. At this moment, the 2 of them have a giant footprint imprinted on their face, the outlines of it clear to see. Half of their face were swollen red, and blood trickled down by edges of their mouth. Not a single hint of their previous dashing and carefree look remained. This was especially so for Shang Bin. His injuries from morning have yet to recover, and yet, he suffered another violent kick. At this instant, his mouth was crooked to the side, and his lips looked like 2 giant sausages, thus pulling him further away from the concept of handsomeness. He had planned everything out perfectly, so as to look cool in front of his goddess. Who knew that not only would he fail, he even got beaten up to such a state, and his connection with Hongtian Pavilion was severed as a result. If things went wrong, he might even be chastised by his grandfather. How could he take this humiliation lying? The more he thought about it, the angrier he got. Thus, he charged up directly towards Zhang Xuan. Shangbin, what do you intend to do? Shenbi Ru didn't expect him to come in pursuit to cause trouble. She stepped in front of Zhang Xuan to shield him from Shangbin. Shen Laoshi, Don't block my way. This is a personal grudge between Zhang Xuan and me. It was one thing if he didn't see her, but when he saw her shielding the infamous trash of the academy, Shangbin was further provoked as his eyes slanted to the sides and his mouth crooked further from the overwhelming rage. The intense envy clouding his mind made him go frenzy. He stared coldly at that young man and shouted, "Zhang Xuan, are you a man? If you're one, stop hiding behind a woman and have a fair duel to the death with me." Seeing how the fellow before him had lost his rationality, Zhang Xuan widened his eyes and said, "So what if I'm hiding behind a woman? This is a part of my capabilities. If you're capable, find one to hide behind as well. You..." Shangbin almost vomited blood. As long as it was a man, if someone insulted him by saying that he was gutless and hid behind the protection of a woman, wouldn't they feel embarrassed and humiliated, such that they would rush forward to retaliate out of indignation? Why does common sense not apply to this fellow? How can he speak of something that should have been incomparably shameful so naturally and righteously? How can one be so thick-skinned? Shen Laoshi, I'll be leaving these two for you to deal with. I still have something on, so I'll be taking my leave first. As a transcender, what had he never seen before? Thick-skinned? What a joke. In his previous life in the information era, have you seen anyone who wasn't shameless? He couldn't be bothered to deal with a problem which someone had taken the initiative to resolve for him. This wasn't fear. Rather, it wasn't a good time for him to be revealing his level of cultivation. On top of that, Shangbin's grandfather was an elder. If he were to be forced to a corner, Zhang Xuan would have to waste precious time dealing with the problems that would ensue. Since someone was shielding him, he was also happy to be spared of the effort. Seeing how shameless the young man was, Shenbi Ru was also at a loss for words. Just a moment ago, she was still fearful that he would be provoked by Shangbin's taunt and duel with him. Now it did seem that she was overthinking it. If this fellow could be provoked, even sows would be able to climb trees. Zhang Xuan, hold it there. If I can't kill you today, I won't be called Shangbin. Seeing the attitude of the young man, Shangbin became even more enraged. Veins popped out from his temples and his face turned into a shade of green. Seeing that Shenbi Ru had no intention of letting him through, he roared, "Sky-shattering lion! Kill him! As long as you do it, I will bring you delicacies every day. Furthermore, I will give you the acupoint soothing pill that my grandfather promised me." As a Tier 6 savage beast that had been tamed by a human, the sky-shattering lion was capable of comprehending human words. As his grandfather's pet, as long as Shangbin was kept out of harm's way, it couldn't be bothered with his orders. In order to get it to make a move, he promised all kinds of benefits to him in an instant. Roar. Indeed, hearing his promises, the eyes of the sky-shattering lion lit up. Savage beasts who have reached Pixiu realm, unlike humans, were unable to use the flow of Zhenqi to break open their acupoints. They could only rely on the growth of their body to gradually pull up their strength. If it were to consume the acupoint soothing pill at this moment, with its effects, its strength would surely soar significantly. Acupoint soothing pill was a pill made specially for Fighter 6 Dan experts. It possessed the effect of soothing one's acupoints, thus allowing one to progress further in Pixiu realm. At this moment, Shangbin's strength had already reached Fighter 5 Dan Dingley pinnacle, just a step off from Pixiu. Thus, Elder Shang Chen spent a huge sum to obtain this medicine so as to give him a boost. Initially, Shangbin was reluctant to take it out. However, upon recalling how he was humiliated by a trash, he found himself unable to suppress his emotions. If he didn't get rid of Zhang Xuan today, he feared that he would be unable to uphold his dignity in the academy anymore. This was especially so for the goddess before him. She probably wouldn't even spare him a gaze. How could he tolerate such a situation? Shangbin, what do you intend to do? Killing a colleague in academy compounds is a huge crime. She didn't expect Shangbin to be so insane to order the sky-shattering lion to make a move. Shenbiru's eyes narrowed. She wanted to rush forward to protect Zhang Xuan, but was blocked by Shangbin instead. Panicking, she bellowed at him. In the compounds, teachers were forbidden from killing one another. To do so was an infringement of the school rules, as well as a severe crime. Zhang Xuan was the one who wanted to kill me. To protect me, the sky-shattering lion retaliated. What I did was legitimate self-defense. What can the others say about it? Shangbin's eyes turned red from insanity. He roared, "Sky-shattering lion, what are you hesitating for? Do it! You..." Shen, B. Ru, felt her heart turning cold. Too shameless. If he were to really use that as a front, with Elder Shang Chen's interference within the matter, he might really get away with it. In fact, it was possible for him to escape punishment completely. Zhang Xuan could very well die here. After all, it was a Tier 6 savage beast. Ordinary Pixu realm experts weren't even its match. How could one who was the last in the teacher qualification examination withstand it? Roar! Just when she was still in a fluster, the sky-shattering lion roared and dashed over. Before coming into contact with it, its powerful aura created a powerful gale that forced the surrounding grass and tree leaves to bow down to it. 9 paths, also known as 3 teachings and 9 paths. This is a real terminology used to classify jobs in ancient China. To put it simply, there are upper 9 paths, middle 9 paths, and lower 9 paths in ancient China, and each of these paths refer to an occupation. For example, the top occupations in ancient China, the 9 occupations listed in the upper 9 paths, are emperor, saints, secluded masters, oracle, scholar, warrior, farmer, worker, merchant. And they are classified from most esteemed, least esteemed. Similarly, the middle 9 paths and lower 9 paths have their own set of occupations as well. The 3 teachings refer to Confucianism, Taoism or Taoism, and Buddhism. Do note that there are different interpretations, versions to the 9 paths, and most of them list Buddha as the first one. Zhang Xuan. Shenbiru tried to break through Shangbin's blockade to save him, but she was knocked back consecutive times. Shangbin's cultivation was on the same level as her. He might be spoiled due to his powerful backing, but his strength wasn't false. Even if she possessed the strength to defeat him, she was still unable to break through his blockade within a short period of time, especially if he chose to execute only defensive maneuvers. I am the one who brought harm to you. Seeing how she was unable to save him, Shenbiru was filled with guilt. She thought that the reason why Shangbin was dealing with this fellow, who was the last for the teacher qualification examination, was because of her. Otherwise, as someone of such high standing and the grandson of an elder towards an infamous trash who had no background whatsoever, when there's no connection between the two, why would there be a grudge between them? Yet, after pulling him down into the mud, she was unable to save him. The guilt she was experiencing at the moment tormented her painfully. Why are there no movements? Could it be that Zhang Xuan has already died? The more panicked she got, the more incapable she was of breaking through Shangbin's blockade. With Shangbin blocking her sight, she was unable to view the situation over at Zhang Xuan's side. She could only hear complete silence in the surroundings, as though he didn't even struggle against the assault of the sky-shattering lion. There could only be one possibility. Before Zhang Xuan could retaliate, he was already smacked to death by the sky-shattering lion. After all, even she was unable to withstand a single blow from the Tier 6 savage beast, which was equivalent to a Pixu realm expert. Haha, he is already dead. It is too late for you to make a move now. Hearing that there were no movements behind him, Shangbin's eyes lit up. He knew that the trash would definitely be unable to withstand a single blow from the sky-shattering lion. He laughed heartily out of excitement, judging that there was no need to block Shen. Ru any longer, he leapt aside. Zhang Xuan. The moment Shang Bin leapt away, Shen Ru didn't waste time on him and hurriedly rushed forward. Just when she thought she would see a pool of fresh blood with a miserable corpse lying in the center of it, her slim figure suddenly froze and she stared in a daze. This... What happened? Initially, Shang Bin thought that his goddess would burst into tears from the shock of the sight. However, upon seeing such an expression hanging on her face, Shang Bin quickly turned around to take a look. With a single glimpse, his eyeballs widened into huge circles, and he almost fainted from overwhelming astonishment. He saw the incomparably ferocious sky-shattering lion, which had rushed towards Zhang Xuan earlier to rip him into numerous shreds before, lying in front of Zhang Xuan like a pug, licking his hands. Zhang Xuan's other hand was stroking the head and ears of the sky-shattering lion, and unspeakable pleasure appeared on the latter's face. The heck? What happened? Shang Bin was on the verge of tears. This sky-shattering lion was his grandfather's beast pet, and it was extremely proud. Even for Shang Bin himself, just a simple touch would incur its fury, not to mention stroking its head. After taking possession of it from his grandfather, he had spent half a day of effort on it, feeding it numerous delicacies. Yet, this fellow didn't even show the slightest bit of gratitude, disregarding his presence as he pleased. Such a proud fellow became a pug before Zhang Xuan? You are here to kill him, to be lying before him and licking his palm. Is this really all right? Shang Bin felt a dizziness spell working up, and he was on the verge of going crazy. Sky-shattering lion, what are you doing? Quickly kill him, he bellowed. The sky-shattering lion didn't move. It continued to laze around, allowing Zhang Xuan to stroke its head freely. You... Quickly kill him. If you do it, I will buy you anything you want to eat from now on. Shang Bin roared anxiously. So noisy! Make him shut up! Zhang Xuan, who was stroking the sky-shattering lion, stood up and waved his hand. Roar! The sky-shattering lion stood up as well and glared at Shang Bin savagely. What are you planning to do? Frightened, Shang Bin immediately retreated several steps. However, before he could get far, the sky-shattering lion dashed forward and took a sweep at him lightly with its paws. Pung! Before Shang Bin could react, he was sent flying backwards like a kite that had its string snapped. His head knocked onto a giant tree, and crimson blood filled his entire face. What exactly happened? You are my grandfather's beast pet, Shang Bin cried. This sky-shattering lion was the beast pet that his grandfather passed on to him to protect him. Logically, it should have listened to his words to deal with the outsider. Why did it listen to the words of an outsider to attack him? Peng! Before he could finish crying, another figure crashed onto the ground in front of him. He was Cao Xiong. When that fellow noticed the situation turning awry, he immediately turned around to flee. However, how could he possibly escape from the sky-shattering lion, a Terror 6 savage beast? He was sent flying back with a slap. Roar! After sending these two flying, the sky-shattering lion looked as though it had done something glorious. It walked over to Zhang Xuan with a flattering look, as though it wanted to be acknowledged for its accomplishment. Not bad. You did well. Zhang Xuan patted its head. Roar! The sky-shattering lion nodded its head quickly. It walked gallantly to the two lying on the floor, keeping a watch on them with a proud look, reminiscent of a responsible watchdog. Shang Bin and Cao Xiong, who were planning to escape, were on the verge of tears. Zhang Xuan, how did you do that? Spectating the entire flow of events by the side, the dumbstruck Shen Ru finally recovered and gazed at him curiously. How did I do it? Zhang Xuan scratched his head. This sky-shattering lion is very easy to communicate with. Perhaps it might be because I'm more handsome. Handsome? Shenbi Ru blinked, and her slim figure staggered. The sky-shattering lion is a savage beast. To it, the term handsome should only be applicable to male sky-shattering lions. So what do you being handsome or not have to do with it? Besides, if one must talk about handsomeness, Shangbin is much more dashing than you. All right, farewell. Zhang Xuan didn't continue explaining and turned around to leave. Since the Library of Heaven's Path could peer into the weaknesses of a human, naturally, it could peer into those of the sky-shattering lion as well. This fellow might seem extremely powerful, but in actuality, it had sustained quite a few hidden traumas. Otherwise, it couldn't have possibly willingly served as Elder Shang Chen's beast pet. The library had detected the flaws of it. Making use of it, Zhang Xuan casually solved some of the easier ones for it. As a result, the sky-shattering lion chose to obey his commands obediently, without the slightest hesitation. In comparison to Shangbin's promise, no amount of delicious food and pills could compare with a resolved, hidden trauma. Of course, this involved his secret as well, so he couldn't possibly reveal the truth to Shenbi Ru. You don't go. You haven't explained the reason why the sky-shattering lion obeyed to your commands. Seeing him leave, Shen Biru quickly caught up. The more she came into contact with this young man, the more formidable she found him to be. He was a mystery that was becoming more and more difficult to comprehend. Being able to read so many books just by flipping through them, intentionally scoring a 0 in the teacher qualification examinations, despite knowing the answers, realizing his identity as a gourmet through a meal, and convincing a Tier 6 savage beast to follow his commands easily. What seemed impossible in the eyes of others was accomplished so simply by this young man, leaving others staring in disbelief. How did he accomplish all these? Shenbi Ru was becoming more and more curious about this young man before her. Big sister. Oblivious to what she was thinking of, upon seeing her chasing him, Zhang Xuan halted his footsteps and said helplessly, I want to live a long life. I'm afraid that I might not live to the next day being beside you. Just spare me. Big sister? You are the big sister. Your entire family is big sisters. Shenbi Ru's face turned bright red. She was a beauty. She might be slightly older than Zhang Xuan, but she looked no different from a 17 or 18-year-old. Yet, this fellow addressed her as big sister, thus causing her to go into a frenzy. Fine, I am the big sister, so just let me leave. Zhang Xuan shook his head in frustration. Pot! Upon hearing Zhang Xuan claim that he was the big sister, Shenbi Ru chuckled and said, Fine, you can leave. I will look for you tomorrow. Zhang Xuan. It was a scene of chaos in Hongtian Pavilion. What happened? I have barely been away for a while and such a sight awaited my return. In a room, an elderly was staring coldly at the kneeling manager Wu. He was the mastermind behind Hongtian Pavilion, Elder Hong Hao. Elder, it is like that. The grandson of Elder Shang Chen, Shang Bin, has been here. Manager Wu didn't dare to conceal anything and disclosed everything that had happened. This included the affair which he swapped the drunk immortal with green crag brew. Wucho, how dare you? After hearing Wucho's words, Elder Hong Hao's face darkened, and he angrily sent a kick towards him. Peng! Manager Wu was immediately sent flying backward. His face paled as he vomited mouthful after mouthful of blood. Elder, spare me. I do not dare hope to be forgiven for my crimes, but that fellow is even viler. To expose all of these in public and causing the reputation of our Hongtian Pavilion to be ruined, he obviously disregards you completely. Humph. After doing such shameful things, you still expect others not to talk about them? Elder Hong Hao's face looked hostile, as though a violent storm was gathering on it. Manager Wu trembled uncontrollably. Changing the contents of the dishes to earn more profits was a decision he made at his own discretion. He thought that he had concealed it perfectly. Yet, he was exposed by that young man in public. Naturally, he felt great resentment against him. "I'll give you 5 days to settle this problem thoroughly. I want the negative impacts to be reduced to the bare minimum. If so, I can consider not to pursue the matter of your corruption. Otherwise, don't even dream of getting away alive." Elder Hong Hao's eyes were cold, like blizzard at night. Standing up, he asked, "Also, what is the name of that fellow? Is he a teacher of the academy?" If he had informed me discreetly, I might have rewarded him with a sum of fortune, but he chose to cause trouble in public instead, soiling the reputation of my Hongtian pavilion. I will have a good look at him tomorrow to see the one who gave him such guts. Bellowing furiously, a savage aura filled the surroundings. It felt like a frontal assault by a wave of frost, causing one to shiver uncontrollably despite the warm weather. Fighter 7 Dan Sen. Corizandin Karsas. Kaorsian Maim. This Elder Hong Hao was a Tangshuan realm expert. It was no wonder that he was able to vie for the position of the principal. Just his level of cultivation itself was already astonishing. It is Zhang Xuan Laoshi, Manager Wu quickly said. Zhang Xuan? The one who was the last in the teacher qualification examination? Elder Hong Hao was taken aback. Hongtian Academy had never had a single teacher scoring at the very bottom of the teacher qualification examination throughout its centuries of history since its inception. Thus, even a person like Elder Hong Hao had heard of Zhang Xuan's name. "That's him." Manager Wu nodded his head. "A trash would actually dare to trample on the dignity of Hongtian Pavilion. Excellent." Clenching his fist, a cold glint flashed across his eyes. A heavy murderous intent emanated from Elder Hong Hao. If the other party was a star teacher or an influential figure in the academy, he might have some hesitation over punishing him. However, since he was a trash, then don't blame him for being heartless. Sigh. How troublesome. Returning back to his dwelling, Zhang Xuan massaged the center of his eyebrows. He would have never thought it possible for so much trouble to evolve from just a simple meal. Forget it. There's no use pondering over it. I better spend my time thinking about how I can break into Pixu realm. Quickly, he dumped all excessive thoughts to the back of his head. Despite being a transcender, he knew that in this world, power reigns over might. Only with sufficient power would the problems of one cease to be. He was currently at Dingley Realm Pinnacle, and to break through, he would need the cultivation techniques of Fighter 6 Dan. However, an ordinary teacher didn't have the qualification to browse through the 6 Dan cultivation techniques of the academy. They could jot down a copy of it only with the approval of an elder. In the previous examination, he only had the strength of a Fighter 3 Dan. If he were to rush to an elder to ask for a 6 Dan cultivation technique now, he might end up being researched like a guinea pig. Many troubles would grow out of it. Furthermore, even with the approval of the other party, with just one copy, he was still unable to cultivate. Based on the first 5 Dans of Hongtian 9 Dan formula, this cultivation technique possessed too many flaws. Without the cross-references from numerous other cultivation techniques to seek the correct cultivation method, there wouldn't be any results in his training even if he were to train non-stop for several years. To him, the most pressing matter at hand was to seek a huge pile of Fighter 6 Dan cultivation techniques and draw comparisons among them to deduce the correct cultivation method. I've heard that quite a bit of trading is done in Tianshuan Royal City, and cultivation techniques are one of the goods that are being traded. It would solve quite a bit of problem if I am able to purchase a few 6 Dan cultivation techniques. Suddenly, upon recalling something, Zhang Xuan's eyes lit up. Hongtian Academy was located in the capital of Tianshuan Kingdom, Tianshuan Royal City. Tianshuan Royal City was an extraordinarily prosperous city. With numerous large commercial cities in here, all kinds of trade were being carried out. 6-dan cultivation techniques might be rare, but it was still sold in numerous shops here. Furthermore, to Zhang Xuan, there wasn't really a need for him to buy them. As long as he managed to flip through them, it would be as good as gaining possession of the secret manual. With the Library of Heaven's Path, the quality and price of the secret manual no longer matter. As long as there was sufficient quantity, he would be able to derive the correct path out of the innumerable errors, and the Heaven's Path divine art would be automatically compiled, thus allowing him to cultivate swiftly. It is still early. Let's see if I'm able to get a few books today. At this point, Zhang Xuan stopped hesitating and stood up immediately. The sun had just set, and the nightlife had just begun. Since he was free anyway, it was a good opportunity to stroll through the Miuri. Perhaps he might even find some useful items. Tianyu Commercial City was the largest trading market in Tianshuan City. It was said that as long as one possessed sufficient money, he was able to buy everything he desired here. Stepping into the market, Zhang Xuan felt his vision blurring from the sight of the innumerable goods laid out before him. His previous self was just an ordinary teacher. His wages were low, and he was treated poorly. As a result, he had never been to such a grand place before. Thus, Zhang Xuan found himself incapable of identifying most of the goods on sale here. There were many small vendors in the commercial city. A vendor would sit in front of each of these booths, and all kinds of goods were laid out before them. Weapons, pills, herbs, armor, beast skin, beast pills. Almost everything that was required for cultivation could be found here. Just that there were too many of them. It was difficult to ascertain which of them were of superior quality and which of them were of inferior quality. I may be unable to discern between the good and the bad, but the Library of Heaven's Path may be capable of it. Such a thought flashed through his mind. Thus, Zhang Xuan immediately walked over to a booth. "This gentleman here, what are you looking for? I have everything you need here, and I guarantee your satisfaction with my goods." The vendor quickly welcomed his presence. "I'll just take a casual look." Zhang Xuan smiled. He casually picked up an object in the booth. It was a circular bell of average size. This bell is specially forged by a blacksmith and has extraordinary abilities. It is on sale for just 50 gold coins. I can assure you that the price is fair. I offer the very same price to everyone passing by. If you're interested in it, I can give you a special discount. It'll be yours for just 20 gold coins, the vendor coaxed. Zhang Xuan didn't respond to his words. Rather, he twirled the bell around his hand. Wang! The library in his mind jolted, and a book appeared in it. Reprise bell. It is able to generate the same tune over and over again, causing one to feel dizzy-headed. It is effective against Fighter 1 Dan. It is created by a 1-month craftsman of Blue Cloud Workshop. It is made of Wujin metal. Flaws? No. 1. The duration required for the reprise sound to take effect is long, requiring at least an incense's time, making it an ineffective weapon in battle. Number 2. It doesn't differentiate in its attacks. The wielder will take damage from it as well. Minute. Indeed, it is possible. Zhang Xuan smiled. It didn't matter even if he was unfamiliar with all these items. As long as he touched them with his hands and picked them up, the library would compile a corresponding book on it. Furthermore, this book detailed the history, composition, and all kinds of flaws of the item in question comprehensively. With just a single look, it was apparent to see if the item was valuable or not. Those who were unaware of the truth might just buy it with the vendor's previous offer of 20 gold coins. Only by looking at the contents recorded in the book did Zhang Xuan realize that this toy wasn't even worth 2 gold coins. What's specially forged by a blacksmith, Blue Cloud Workshop is an organization that specializes in the production of fake goods. Furthermore, 1-month craftsmen are the ones with the worst craftsmanship of them all. Those who specialized in the creation of goods and handicraft were termed as craftsmen. They were classified into 9 mo, with 1 mo being the worst and 9 mo being the best. How valuable could a creation of a 1 mo craftsman be? With the library here, I won't have to worry about purchasing fake goods. Zhang Xuan chuckled. This world was similar to his previous one. With authentic goods come imitations. Given his previous ability of discernment, needless to say, the authentic ones, he might not even be able to tell the strengths and weaknesses of an imitation. However, with the assistance of the library, he didn't have to worry about it anymore. Just that he needed to come into contact with the item for a book to be compiled on it. The number of items in this market total up to at least 10 million. If he had to touch every single one of them, wouldn't he tire himself to death? Besides, if he were to just look at the goods, he wouldn't attract much attention. However, if he touched everything his sight caught, it probably wouldn't take long for the security enforcement team of the commercial city to think of him as a lunatic and drive him out of the city. Right. Do you sell frigid sungrass here? Shaking his head to dispel the additional thoughts in his mind, Zhang Xuan asked. On top of miscellaneous items, this vendor also sold some herbs. After finishing those books in the Compendium Pavilion, he had already found a solution to Zhao Ya's problem. With a pure yin body, she should cultivate a gentle and neutral cultivation technique. This way, the problem of the accumulation of yin energy should be solved. However, she had already cultivated a pure yin cultivation technique for a long time, and the meridians in her body have already adapted to it. If an abrupt change were to be introduced, her body might sustain a severe trauma, and her cultivation would fall steeply. To prevent this from occurring, some preparations have to be made in advance. One of them was to nourish her meridians through medicinal herbs. Frigid sungrass grew in cold regions despite favoring sunny conditions. As a result, the warm and cold spiritual energy contained within it clashed, causing the amalgamation of yin and yang, thus making it the ideal choice for nourishing her meridians. Since he was in the commercial city now, it was a good time for him to ask around about it. Frigid sungrass? It is a coincidence that you ask this. Not to brag, but I can guarantee you that I am the only vendor in Tianyu Commercial City that has this good. I procured them a few days ago from a dangerous region in Tianshuan Forest. I have a total of 10 stalks, and each stalk cost 100 gold coins. How many do you need? The vendor smiled and turned around to take out a box. Opening it, a few fresh-looking plants were revealed within, white flowers with red stems and leaves. Let me take a look first. Zhang Xuan only knew about the frigid sungrass through reading books, so he wasn't very familiar with it. He reached out to grab a stalk and placed it on his palm. Wang! The library jolted and a book appeared. Frigid sungrass, harvested from an unknown valley 200 kilometers into Tianshuan Forest, aged 2. Flaws ... The name of the herb was written on the cover of the book, and the location of its procurement and its flaws were recorded in it. It is frigid sungrass, this fellow isn't lying. Confirming that there was no mistake with the name on the book, Zhang Xuan knew that the vendor owner wasn't lying to him. This was the authentic medicinal herb, so he nodded his head. Just when he was about to speak, his eyes happened to glance on the interiors of the box. Why does this stalk of frigid sun grass look slightly withered? Could it be that your procurement method is incorrect, causing its death? There was a specific method to harvesting medicinal herbs. If the method was wrong, the medicinal properties of the herb might be lost, causing its price to drop steeply. The stalk of frigid sungrass he was talking about was withered thin and slightly yellow, seemingly immature. Furthermore, it didn't look fresh at all. With a shriveled large head, it seemed as though it would die at any moment. This gentleman here must be joking. I depend on this for a living, so how could I possibly get it wrong? This stalk of herb isn't of good condition from the very start. It was already like that when I procured it initially. If you want it, I will sell it to you at half price, 50 gold coins, the vendor said. Zhang Xuan picked up the yellowish and withered stalk of frigid sun grass. Weng! Frigid sun mother grass, the origin of other frigid sun grasses, harvested from an unknown valley 200 kilometers into Tianshuan Forest, aged 15. Flipping open the book, the name of the herb and details on it were recorded. Frigid sun mother grass? Zhang Xuan's eyes lit up. He had read it on the books previously. This extremely valuable and rare herb was the core of all other frigid sun grass. If this herb were to be used in the creation of a medicine, its effectiveness would at least be 10 times the latter. He didn't expect to stumble upon this treasure when he was just casually looking for herbs. Furthermore, this herb was 15-year-old. Just by this determined its extraordinary worth. If Zhao Ya were to use the frigid sun grass to nourish her meridians, she would still require the augmentation from several other means to successfully change her cultivation technique. However, with this stalk of frigid sun grass, the problem could be easily solved. She wouldn't even need the augmentation from other means. This was the most suitable medicinal herb for her. No questions about it. Wrap this stalk up for me. Although he was agitated, his face still remained expressionless as he casually passed it back to the vendor. If the other party realized that this was a mother stalk and not a sickly one, its price would instantly shoot up by 10 times, and even so, he might still be unable to purchase it from him. As a four-halves youngster who grew up in the modern civilized world, he wouldn't do himself any injustice when he was able to profit out of something. 50 gold coins. Seeing how well-dressed the young man seemed to be, he thought that he would purchase a few stalks. He didn't expect that he would just buy a sickly one. Pursing his lips, he wrapped it casually, the warmth from before absent on his face. Even a vendor judged his own customers when doing sales. The person before him wasn't even willing to buy a good medicinal herb, thus making it clear to see that he was a poor bloke. Since that's the case, it would just be a waste of time to try to coax him otherwise. All right. Grabbing the herb, Zhang Xuan reached out to his pocket, and awkwardness immediately showed on his face. Due to being too absorbed in the library, he forgot about the matter of money. As a low-level teacher, his wage was low. Furthermore, due to scoring a 0 in the teacher qualification examination, his fortunes were penalized severely. In other words, he didn't even have 10 gold coins in his pocket, needless to say, 50. Is there anything wrong? Sensing that something was amiss from his face, the vendor asked, "Cough, cough, can you sell it to me for 8 gold coins?" Zhang Xuan counted the gold coins he retrieved from his pocket, only having 8 pieces of them. 8? You must be joking. Since you didn't bring any money, why are you trying to buy anything at all? Seeing the few coins placed on the other party's palm, the vendor owner was on the verge of doing a somersault and crashing to the floor. He had met with miserly customers, but he had never met with such a miserly one. Trying to buy frigid sun grass with just 8 gold coins? You must be dreaming. Even if this stalk is sickly, it is still worth far beyond this price. Snatching back the herb, he waved his hand with an annoyed look. Scram if you don't have any money. I don't have the effort to be arguing with you over this. Cough, cough. It is true that I didn't bring sufficient money, but are you sure that you don't want to sell it to me? Seeing the attitude of the vendor, Zhang Xuan shook his head. Nonsense. Even if the stalk looks awful, it still contains medicinal properties. At worst, it can still be sold for 30 or 40 gold coins. Yet, you offer me 8 gold coins? What a joke. Hurry up and leave, or else I will be calling for the security enforcement team. Seeing how this fellow was reluctant to leave despite being broke, he angrily chased him away. In order to prevent people from coercing others to buy or sell goods, as well as to deter troublemakers, most large commercial cities operated a security enforcement patrol team in their perimeter. As long as one called out for them, they would appear quickly. Even if you were a Fighter 5 Dan Dingley realm expert, you would be chased out of the commercial city instantly. Furthermore, to make a move on the security enforcement team meant making a move on the entire commercial city. Normally, no one would have the guts to stand up against them. Upon seeing how this fellow refused to leave despite not possessing sufficient money, he was certain that he was here to cause trouble. So he opened his mouth to call for the security enforcement team. "Don't call for the security enforcement team. I'm really interested in buying it." Zhang Xuan interrupted him. With a calm and steady look, he chuckled softly. "I might not have sufficient money, but I'm not here to cause trouble. Do you believe that if I were to open my mouth, not only will you be willing to sell it to me, you would even offer to give it to me for free?" "Give it to you for free? Are you still in the midst of your sleep?" The vendor didn't expect the poor bloke to say such words. He looked at the young man before him with an attitude as though he was looking at an idiot and sneered coldly. "If I were to really give it to you for free, I'll call you Grandpa." In his opinion, this fellow must have a screw loose. Not mentioning how he didn't bring sufficient money to purchase goods, he even thought that he would give it to him for free. "I am not insane. Why would I give it to you for free? Who do you think you are?" "Call me Grandpa. You don't need to do that." Zhang Xuan shook his head. He looked at the vendor with a bright smile and said, "You will give it to me for free because I said so. If you doubt my words, I will take 2 steps. Cough, cough, let's see what will happen after I give you a punch." 4 halves refer to dream, moral, culture, and discipline. Originated from Deng Xiaoping in 1980. "Give me a punch?" The vendor didn't know what the young man was up to. Indeed, Zhang Xuan nodded his head. "You are trying to make a fool out of me." Seeing the serious look on the other person's face, the vendor's rage came surging out, and he sent a fist toward Zhang Xuan. He had seen crazy people before, but he had never seen such a crazy person. "You still want me to let you give me a punch? Why don't I beat you up to death instead?" Putting all of his strength into his punch routine, the wind rustled from the force of his blow, thus exposing his level of cultivation. Fighter 3 Dan Zhenqi Realm Primary Stage. Not bad. Smiling faintly, Zhang Xuan moved his body slightly to dodge the attack. He had already reached Fighter 5. Dan Dingley. Realm Pinnacle. Naturally, the strength of a Fighter 3rd Dan Primary Stage could not hurt him. He assumed that the young man was here just to cause trouble, so he thought that he would just be a delinquent without cultivation. However, upon seeing him dodge his attack easily, he immediately realized that the young man's cultivation was on a higher level than his. The vendor stopped as bewilderment overwhelmed him. A fellow who had at least reached the level of Fighter 3rd Dan couldn't possibly be really trying to buy stuff with just 8 gold coins on... "If I'm not wrong, you are from Xiapingyi." The moment the vendor made a move, a book about him was compiled in the Library of Heaven's Path. Getting what he had intended for, Zhang Xuan smiled faintly. How did you know?" The vendor was taken aback. Xiapingyi was one of the provincial cities around Tianshuan Royal City. It wasn't a large city, and there were at least 80 of such cities around the capital. The vendor was puzzled by how Zhang Xuan could pinpoint it out accurately. He couldn't resist looking down to study his appearance, but there didn't seem to be any defining traits on him that would reveal his place of origin. "It doesn't matter how I know it." Zhang Xuan activated his acting cool mode. He looked at the other party once again in a calm and dignified demeanor. "Half a year ago, you probably met with danger in Tianshuan Forest and was bitten by a cold bamboo snake. Although you managed to escape with your life, your kidneys were damaged. If I'm not wrong, when you are doing that, it is difficult for you to showcase your masculinity." You... The vendor staggered backward. His eyes were widened so great that they were on the verge of falling to the floor. It was true that he was bitten by a cold bamboo snake in Tianshuan Forest half a year ago. After which... The latter half of Zhang Xuan's words were true as well. However, other than him and the lady from the brothel, he had never talked about it with another person. How did this young man know about it? Could it be that he is a seer? Someone who is capable of divining the future? The vendor was still filled with disbelief. Why? Are my words wrong? Seeing the expression on the other party's face, Zhang Xuan knew that what was written in the Library of Heaven's Path wasn't wrong. Thus, he expressed a look of pity and said, "If you find what I have said inaccurate, I can do without the medicinal herb and leave right now. However, your only chance at treating your problem will disappear as well. Sai, you won't be able to be a man from henceforth. Don't blame me for not reminding you now. Gongzi, don't go." Hearing that the other party was capable of treating him, the vendor's body trembled in agitation as he hurriedly took a step forward. Can you really treat me? To a man, nothing was more pathetic than losing one's potency. These days, he dared not respond to the invitations of his friends, afraid that his problem would be exposed in front of them. Suffering silently, he had looked for many different physicians, but they all came to the same conclusion, that his symptoms were hard to treat, and the only solution was amputation. He dared not believe that a casual buyer would point out his problem directly, and even claim that he was capable of treating it. "I won't force you to believe me. However, since I am able to tell what is wrong with you naturally, I have my own ways to treat it as well," Zhang Xuan declared. "Gongzi, I plead you to help treat me, as long as you can treat me. Not just that single stalk of frigid sungrass, you can take all of my herbs." The vendor lunged forward in panic, the plea in his eyes clear to see. There were too many incredible people in the world. The words of the young man were logical since he was able to see through his problem. He definitely had a way to treat it. Besides, he had no choice but to grasp onto every straw of hope that he could find. After all, this concerned his future happiness. You were bitten by the cold bamboo snake. This creature inherently possesses cold attribute. When you were bitten by it, cold energy erupted into your body, causing you to lose your physical function. Furthermore, it is unable to be dispelled by any medicinal herb, thus even quite a few apothecaries will find themselves helpless before it. However, what is bizarre about this snake is that even though its entire body is cold, its gall is warm. As long as you find another snake, kill it, and consume its gall, you are able to expel the cold energy from your body completely. Your damaged kidney will gradually recover, and you will be able to showcase your masculinity as a man once more, Zhang Xuan said. There were many antidotes to the poison of the cold bamboo snake, but the best antidote of all lied in its body. Its gall was the crux to counteracting its unique cold energy. This was written on one of the manuals in Hongtian Compendium Pavilion. Upon the thought of cold bamboo snakes, this information popped up into his mind. This was also precisely the reason why he only mentioned the gallbladder of the cold bamboo snake. Otherwise, with the Library of Heaven's Path capability of displaying innumerable flaws, there was a multitude of remedies he could provide him. He need not specifically choose this one. Eating the snake gall of a cold bamboo snake? The vendor was still in a state of disbelief. So simple. If this was true, why did none of the many physicians he had visited say so? There should be cold bamboo snakes on sale in this commercial city. If you doubt my words, you can buy one of them and try it right now. I will only leave after we verify it, Zhang Xuan said. Medicinal herbs weren't the only things on sale in Tianyu Commercial City. There were also all kinds of treasures, savage beasts, and animals. Cold bamboo snake was one of the lower-tier savage beasts. Although it contained lethal poison within it, it could be used in concocting medicines, so there were people selling it. Fine. Wait for a moment. After hesitating for a moment, the vendor turned around and left. A short moment later, he returned with a cage, and a cold bamboo snake was coiling around in it. As a Zhenqi realm fighter, as long as he was prepared, killing a cold bamboo snake wasn't a difficult task. It didn't take long for the snake gall to be extracted. Without any hesitation, the vendor swallowed it directly. Soon the vendor's eyes lit up. The vendor seemed to have already gotten an answer to whether the remedy worked or not. I thank Gongzi for your help. These frigid sungrass are all yours. With his eyes glowing with excitement, the vendor nearly knelt down in gratitude from the joy surging through him. This was a problem that had been plaguing him for a long time. In fact, there was even a period when he didn't want to live anymore. In order to treat this deficiency of his, he spent several years' worth of his savings, and never did he expect to be treated just like that. See, I didn't lie when I said that you would give them to me for free. Zhang Xuan helped himself to the generous gifts of the vendor and grabbed the box filled with frigid sun grass. Knowledge was a type of wealth as well. It was natural for Zhang Xuan to receive some compensation from the vendor after solving the illness that was plaguing him. Gongzi, I apologize for my inadequacy for not realizing your capabilities. I beg for your forgiveness. The vendor scratched his head in embarrassment. Just a moment ago, he was still declaring resolutely that if he were to give the frigid sun grasses to Zhang Xuan for free, he would call him grandpa. Never would he expect for Zhang Xuan's words to truly come to be, "It's nothing!" Zhang Xuan casually waved his hand to show that it was a small matter. Just as he was about to leave, a crowd of people suddenly dashed forward, their faces red from agitation. Quick! Master Mo Yang is here! One would be able to prosper through the guidance of Master Mo Yang. This is an opportunity not to be missed. This time, as long as it is a treasure that Master Mo Yang appraised, I will buy it no matter how much it costs. Indeed, I felt regretful after missing that opportunity by the previous time. The crowd discussed as they ran over. What is happening? Seeing how the crowd were agitated as though a star had arrived, Zhang Xuan was puzzled. Master Mo Yang has come. Even the eyes of the vendor were glowing with excitement. Gongzi, gentlemen, is the Master Mo Yang you all speak of that incredible? Zhang Xuan asked doubtfully. To be capable of inciting the agitation of so many people and causing them to go into a frenzy. Who was this Master Mo Yang? Just what kind of magical abilities did he possess? Yes, he's extremely incredible. Reverence could be heard from the vendor's tone. He is an expert appraiser. Appraiser? Zhang Xuan nodded his head. Appraiser and gourmet were both special occupations. However, the former was a Middle Nine Paths occupation. This occupation might not be as glorious as apothecaries, blacksmiths, and formation masters, but it was capable of sending innumerable people into hysteria. That was because they were able to tell whether an item was a treasure or not, just by looking at it. In the field of treasure speculation, they possessed golden fingers that made them an existence similar to the god of gambling. Many people would follow behind them reverently the moment they appeared in public. Treasure speculation was a commercial activity similar to Earth's rock speculation. There were some ancient treasures whose original radiance was buried under the cloak of rock and faunas. Just by the outer appearance itself, the most one could do was to identify what the artifact was. It was impossible to tell the tier of the treasure and the specifications of it. Its true form would only be revealed when the exterior of the artifact was cleaned. There were many treasure dealers who chose not to clean up these treasures and sell them in such a form instead. This was similar to the concept of rock gambling, after which the buyer would purchase the artifact based on their discernment ability and intuition and clean up its exterior afterwards. If they were lucky, it might turn out to be a supreme treasure, which would make them millionaires in an instant. On the other hand, it was also possible for them to go bankrupt after investing greatly on some useless object, heaven on one side and hell on the other. It was due to the unreasonable unpredictability of the game that many people were obsessed with it, sometimes even going crazy over it. Appraisers were capable of ascertaining whether a treasure was real or not. Those who were more capable were even able to make a judgment on an artifact before it has been tidied up. Thus, even though the occupation was only of the Middle Nine Paths, The charms of it had attracted many to walk on such a road. After all, it was the Midas's touch. As long as they thought that it was a treasure, people would buy it, no matter how expensive they were. This master Mo Yang arrived here 7 days ago. It is rumored that he is an incredible appraiser from some other kingdom. However, back then, no one paid him any notice. The vendor introduced Master Mo Yang excitedly. The first day when someone wanted to buy a wine bottle-like object that costs about 100 gold coin, Master Mo Yang tried to persuade him otherwise. However, that person refused to listen, and in the end, after wiping it clean, it was proven that there is a problem with the object and it wasn't worth a single gold coin. The second day, Master Mo Yang persuaded a fighter to spend 200 gold coins to buy a treasure. That person refused to believe him, so he didn't buy it. Thus, Master Mo Yang bought it himself, and after it was wiped clean, it turned out to be a mortal pinnacle weapon. It is something that cannot be bought even with several thousand gold coins. He profited several dozen folds in an instant, that filled the fighter with so much regret that the thought of suicide even crossed his mind. By the third day, he was already very famous. There were many people who wanted his guidance on what they should buy. However, only a lucky lad was granted that opportunity. He advised him to buy a small jade bottle that is worth 500 gold coins. At that moment, many people thought that he had erred. No matter how incredible that jade vase was, it couldn't possibly be worth such a sum. Who knew that the moment it was opened, 6 Tier 6 pills were found inside? Someone even offered to buy that vase for 10,000 gold coins on the spot. The vendor's eyes lit up. That is to say, a profit of 20-fold. That is too incredible. The next few days, he came by the market every day, and he only advised a single person on each day. Is the Master Mo Yang you all speak of that incredible? Zhang Xuan asked doubtfully. To be capable of inciting the agitation of so many people and causing them to go into a frenzy. Who was this Master Mo Yang? Just what kind of magical abilities did he possess? Yes, he's extremely incredible. Reverence could be heard from the vendor's tone. He is an expert appraiser. Appraiser? Zhang Xuan nodded his head. Appraiser and gourmet were both special occupations. However, the former was a Middle Nine Paths occupation. This occupation might not be as glorious as apothecaries, blacksmiths, and formation masters, but it was capable of sending innumerable people into hysteria. That was because they were able to tell whether an item was a treasure or not, just by looking at it. In the field of treasure speculation, they possessed golden fingers that made them an existence similar to the god of gambling. Many people would follow behind them reverently the moment they appeared in public. Treasure speculation was a commercial activity similar to Earth's rock speculation. There were some ancient treasures whose original radiance was buried under the cloak of rock and faunas. Just by the outer appearance itself, the most one could do was to identify what the artifact was. It was impossible to tell the tier of the treasure and the specifications of it. Its true form would only be revealed when the exterior of the artifact was cleaned. There were many treasure dealers who chose not to clean up these treasures and sell them in such a form instead. This was similar to the concept of rock gambling, after which the buyer would purchase the artifact based on their discernment ability and intuition and clean up its exterior afterwards. If they were lucky, it might turn out to be a supreme treasure, which would make them millionaires in an instant. On the other hand, it was also possible for them to go bankrupt after investing greatly on some useless object, heaven on one side and hell on the other. It was due to the unreasonable unpredictability of the game that many people were obsessed with it, sometimes even going crazy over it. Appraisers were capable of ascertaining whether a treasure was real or not. Those who were more capable were even able to make a judgment on an artifact before it has been tidied up. Thus, even though the occupation was only of the Middle Nine Paths, the charms of it had attracted many to walk on such a road. After all, it was the Midas's touch. As long as they thought that it was a treasure, people would buy it, no matter how expensive they were. This master Mo Yang arrived here 7 days ago. It is rumored that he is an incredible appraiser from some other kingdom. However, back then, no one paid him any notice. The vendor introduced Master Mo Yang excitedly. The first day when someone wanted to buy a wine bottle-like object that costs about 100 gold coin, Master Mo Yang tried to persuade him otherwise. However, that person refused to listen, and in the end, after wiping it clean, it was proven that there is a problem with the object and it wasn't worth a single gold coin. The second day, Master Mo Yang persuaded a fighter to spend 200 gold coins to buy a treasure. That person refused to believe him, so he didn't buy it. Thus, Master Mo Yang bought it himself, and after it was wiped clean, it turned out to be a mortal pinnacle weapon. It is something that cannot be bought even with several thousand gold coins. He profited several dozen folds in an instant, that filled the fighter with so much regret that the thought of suicide even crossed his mind. By the third day, he was already very famous. There were many people who wanted his guidance on what they should buy. However, only a lucky lad was granted that opportunity. He advised him to buy a small jade bottle that is worth 500 gold coins. At that moment, many people thought that he had erred. No matter how incredible that jade vase was, it couldn't possibly be worth such a sum. Who knew that the moment it was opened, 6 Tier 6 pills were found inside? Someone even offered to buy that vase for 10,000 gold coins on the spot. The vendor's eyes lit up. That is to say, a profit of 20-fold. That is too incredible. The next few days, he came by the market every day, and he only advised a single person on each day. Leaving tonight? Master, why don't you stay for a few more days? Why are you leaving so soon? Hearing that the master was about to depart from the city, looks of anxiety appeared on the faces of the crowd. It is rare for an appraiser to appear in Tianquan Royal City, and yet he is leaving just after a few days? I still have matters to attend to. Master Mo Yang's eyebrows shot upwards. He carried with him a demeanor unique to experts, and his disposition was reminiscent of a flowing river, unable to be grasped with certainty. How about this? I will increase the number of treasures I will appraise today from 5 to 10. You all also know that appraising isn't an easy task. It drains one's strength and energy. 10 is already my limit. Master, rest assured, as long as you help me pick out an artifact for me, I am willing to compensate you. A middle-aged man shouted from the crowd. Yeah, we are willing to compensate you. As long as Master chooses something out for me, regardless of the cost of the item is, I am willing to pay Master the same amount of money. There were quite a few people who started yelling in response to his words. Based on the battle records of the Master, those who had received his pointers had each earned several folds of the amount they had invested initially. As long as they were able to obtain a true treasure, paying a little bit of money in compensation was nothing in comparison. Humph. Master Mo Yang flung his arm and interrupted the discussions of the crowd. Frowning, he declared with an aura of superiority, I, Mo Yang, didn't learn appraisal for money. The reason why I am appraising for you all is not to make a wealth. If I really desired money, there is no need for me to help you all. I just have to appraise an artifact and sell it myself. Then won't I earn a bigger fortune that way? King. The crowd was stumped for words. His words weren't wrong. With his eye of discernment, he could just buy those artifacts that he had appraised to become treasures for himself, and he would be able to easily earn a big sum out of it. The reason why I promised to appraise for you all is because your warmth has moved me. Money is fleeting to me, similar to the clouds. Money is easy to earn, but friendship is priceless. With both his hands behind his back, Master Mo Yang exuded an aura of an unworldly saint that mortals could only look up to. He continued, The reason why I promised to appraise artifacts for you all is because of our relationship, not for money. If anyone were to continue talking about money, then don't bother asking me to appraise for you. Master, your words are wise. We were too impertinent. We can never hope to match up the master in terms of morals. I have never conceded to anyone in my entire life. Today, you are the first one I will concede to, master." Hearing the words of the master, those who were shouting about paying him previously felt ashamed of themselves. Look at how he carries himself, then look at ourselves. Is there even a basis for comparison? No wonder he is a master while we are just small fries. However, before I start appraising for you all, I would like to say something. An appraiser can only heighten the possibility of attaining a treasure. I cannot promise you all that you all will get a treasure with 100% probability. Master Mo Yang continued. Master, we all are aware that treasure speculation brings about risk. Your ability to discern treasure from trash is far superior to us, and we trust in you. We believe in Master's judgment. We know the rules. How can one possibly lay their hands on treasures all the time? However, we believe that Master would definitely be able to help us profit. Everyone started shouting simultaneously. Since everyone believes in me, then I will go ahead and embarrass myself. May I know which friend here would like me to choose an artifact for him? Master Mo Yang surveyed the surrounding. Me! Me! In an instant, innumerable people raised their hands and leapt about in excitement. The appeal of an appraiser was clear to see. Every action of theirs could make people go into frenzy. All right, you, Master Mo Yang pointed, and a pot-bellied middle-aged man walked out from the crowd, still unable to believe the fact that he had been chosen. Me? Is it really me? It's you. Master Mo Yang nodded his head with a smile on his face, the aura of a master clearly exuding through his actions. Thank you, Master. The middle-aged man leapt in excitement as he stared at the elder before him with a desirous gaze. Master, may I ask which one of them I should buy? Let me take a look. Flinging his sleeves, he walked forward. He calmly gazed upon the numerous artifacts placed on the platform. The crowd turned silent along with his actions, not daring to speak out loud for fear of distracting him. Soon, he stopped and placed his palm on one of the artifacts. After feeling the exterior of the artifact gently, he seemed to use some kind of special technique that resulted in the shuddering of his entire body. A moment later, his face paled slightly. All right, you can buy this one. I have just taken a look at it with my special technique, and it is worth quite a sum. Master Mo Yang turned around and informed the middle-aged man. This one? The eyes of the middle-aged man lit up, and he rushed forward to take a look. It was a gigantic treasure that had been enveloped by a thick layer of rock to the point that the entire artifact simply looked like a giant boulder. This kind of treasure was the hardest to clean. Furthermore, given its massive size, being around the height of a human, it would take at least a day or two to chip the stone off of it carefully. Master Mo Yang nodded his head. Since it is a recommendation by the master, I will buy it. The middle-aged man nodded his head and looked towards the dealer. How much does it cost? 50,000 gold coins. The dealer of the treasure speculation hall stepped forward. 50,000? The middle-aged man was taken aback. This wasn't a small sum. Even despite the great wealth he possessed, it was about the limit of what he can come up with. Even a popular high-level teacher like Shenbi Ru only earned around 1,000 gold coins every month. She would take several years just to reach 50,000. Buy it. This is a recommendation by the master. If you don't want it, I will take it. Upon seeing his hesitation, someone in the crowd shouted, Indeed, the master's recommendation can't possibly go wrong. It might cost 50,000 now, but if it is worth 1 million after it has been cleaned up, then you would have landed on a gold mine. The previous few times, the treasures that the master appraised were of smaller scale. This time, he seems to have decided to go all out. You really struck it big this time. Quite a few people shouted out, All right, I will buy it. After hesitating for a moment, the middle-aged man nodded his head and footed the bill. All right, the second one. After the middle-aged man bought the artifact, Master Mo Yang seemed to have also recovered from his exertion and surveyed the surroundings once more. Me! Me! The rest of the crowd raised their hands hurriedly. Glancing over, Zhang Xuan noticed the vendor from before whom he had helped solve his problem in the crowd. His hand was raised up high, and he waved it with an enthusiastic expression, his strong desire to be chosen by the master clear to see. You! Master Mo Yang chose another person. This time, it was an elderly who was dressed extravagantly. With just a single look, it is apparent that he owned great wealth. Similar to the first time, the master walked past the pile of treasures and soon set his sights upon one of it. 80,000 gold coins. This treasure was even more expensive than the one from before. However, this elderly didn't even hesitate and immediately paid the bill. Isn't this the ornamental vase crafted by a 1-month craftsman from the southern kiln? 80,000 gold coins? After taking a good look at the treasure Master Mo Yang chose for the elder, Zhang Xuan blinked his eyes in disbelief. He might be unable to ascertain the value of the other treasures, given that he had yet to take a look at them, but he had already peered into the one Master Mo Yang just chose. It might be big, but only a decorative vase was contained inside. It wasn't even worth a single gold coin, and yet 80,000 gold coins? Could he be off the mark? Just as puzzlement filled his mind, Zhang Xuan couldn't help but stare at the righteous-looking face of the master when his mind suddenly jolted and a book appeared in the library. The words Mo Yang was written on it. Could he be using a battle technique at the moment? Based on the unique properties of the Library of Heaven's Path, a book could only be compiled when one showcases his battle technique. Could it be that the fellow is using one at the current moment? Filled with bewilderment, he flipped open the book. Taking a look at it, Zhang Xuan's lip twitched and a bizarre expression appeared on his face. The numerous flaws and the past deeds of Master Mo Yang were recorded on the book. Originally known as Yang Mo, an apprentice appraiser, a scammer in Luzhu Kingdom who made his name as an appraiser, notorious for his frauds to earn wealth and the favor of women. Battle techniques. Voice of allurement. Rookie. Beguile the mind of others through words, making it easier to convince them. Flaws. No. 1. Outlawed by the royalty of Luzhu Kingdom. Number 2. Zhang Xuan didn't know whether he should laugh or cry, to think that the fellow who had the appearance and disposition of an expert would turn out to be a scammer. For a moment back there, even Zhang Xuan thought that he was an amazing figure. Looks like there were quite a few people in the crowd that were his men. The dealer selling the artifacts must be an accomplice of his as well. They worked together to build up his fame out of appraising treasures so that they could convince people to buy useless trash at a high price, thus profiting out of it. If there is someone conducting a fraud, there must be someone that would be tricked as well. Despite knowing that the other party was a fraudster, Zhang Xuan had no intentions to expose him at all. Firstly, he didn't have the evidence to prove it. The matter with the Library of Heaven's Path must not be exposed at all costs. Secondly, those who had been scammed by him had already lost their rationality. If he were to try to convince them that he is a fraudster, it was possible that he might end up getting lynched by them. Zhang Xuan would never do deeds that did not benefit him, not to mention that it would bring him a string of troubles. Forget it. I think I will just look through and buy my own items. Couldn't be bothered with the Master Mo Yang, who was busy trying to act cool by putting on an expert's demeanor. Zhang Xuan continued to browse through the treasures placed on the platform, casually touching them as he passed by them. A book would be compiled in his mind as long as he came into physical contact with the item. Although the prices of the item weren't reflected in the library, the items with fewer flaws were definitely of higher value. After touching 40 to 50 items, he realized that there was not a single valuable one among them. The absurdly low possibility of finding a treasure in the mix made him shudder. The final chance will be given to you. Just as Zhang Xuan was busy touching the artifacts around the room, an authoritative voice resounded within the room. Turning his head to take a look, he saw the worldly expert Master Mo Yang looking at him, nodding his head slightly as though to ascertain Zhang Xuan's doubts that he had been chosen. Countless gaze were affixed to him, and they were filled with envy. Me? Zhang Xuan was taken aback. This little friend here, there's no need for you to be so unconfident about yourself. You are the one. Master Mo Yang stroked his beard with a proud expression, as though saying that it was Zhang Xuan's honor to be chosen by him. Unconfident? Zhang Xuan shook his head. Which part of him looked unconfident? Rather, he was thinking about how he could be so unlucky to be chosen. Of so many frenzied followers following behind you, why did you have to choose me? However, after a short moment, he came to a realization. Those who were here for treasure speculation today were mostly following behind the back of the master. Given that Zhang Xuan was the only one strolling about the hall, browsing through and touching the artifacts casually, it would be hard for him to not stand out. I appreciate your goodwill, but I don't need it. Knowing that the other party was a fraudster, he was unwilling to become the gold mine for him to profit from. Zhang Xuan waved his hand and continued to look through the pile of treasures. Don't need it? Master Mo Yang frowned. Of the 9 slots he had given out previously, regardless of who they were, they all responded to him in enthusiasm, some even on the verge of fainting due to excessive agitation. Yet, when he chose this fellow, he actually didn't want it. He concealed his darkened face quickly. Waving his hand, he walked forward while stroking his beard and looked at Zhang Xuan with a pained expression. Since you're here for treasure speculation, surely you would wish to buy a true treasure. I noticed that you have been browsing around the hall unskillfully, so I decided to offer you some guidance so that you won't end up bankrupt at such a young age. Are you certain that you don't need it? Don't disappoint me by rejecting the goodwill that I hold for you. Lad, if you don't want the slot, give it to me. He actually doesn't want the slot the master gave him. Is there something wrong with his head? It is clear to see that he is abnormal with a single look. I have noticed the fellow previously. He had been touching all of the artifacts in the room. It could be that he is thinking of stealing something. If Master were to grant such an opportunity to me, I would probably awake from my sleep smiling every day. Everyone could hear the conversation between Zhang Xuan and the Master clearly, and they stared at the former as though they were looking at a monster. He is a master appraiser. He will be leaving today after appraising for 10 people. It is such a good opportunity, and everyone is vying for it frenziedly. Yet this fellow doesn't want it. If his brain isn't damaged, what else can it be? I really don't need it. Zhang Xuan shook his head. End up bankrupt? If I listen to your words, then I will truly end up bankrupt. Don't be so quick to reject me. Before Zhang Xuan could finish his words, Master Mo Yang interrupted. With deep eyes that reflected his compassion for the world and his determination to save those in suffering, he said, It isn't easy for a youngster like you to earn some money. I do not hope to earn anything from granting you this slot. It is out of the kindness of my heart that I hope that you do not buy something useless and waste your fortune. Master Mo Yang is too compassionate. Not only is he capable of authenticating treasures, he is also kind. I am going to idolize him. From today onward, I will only respect one person, and that is Master Mo Yang. Hearing his words, everyone felt a resurgence of respect for him. Look at how compassionate he is. Despite possessing the ability to appraise treasures, he doesn't use it to earn great wealth. Instead, fearing that other people would suffer from making a wrong judgment, he is willing to expend the additional effort to appraise for him. One probably can't find another person as kind as him, even if one were to roam the world with a lantern. He didn't expect him to be so shameless to declare these words in such a righteous tone. Zhang Xuan shook his head, but just as he was about to speak, the other party interrupted him once more. All right, I know what you are thinking. Say no more. The elder looked at him calmly with pride reflecting in his eyes. You know my thoughts? Zhang Xuan asked doubtfully. Indeed. You must be thinking that you are too young and do not possess sufficient strength. Even if you successfully obtain a treasure, you don't have the strength to guard it. Instead, you might even attract disaster to yourself. Master Mo Yang said in a know-it-all tone, with his hands behind his back. So that's the reason. Not only is the master incredible at appraising treasures, to think that he would have the capability of peering into the thoughts of others as well. It is true that owning a treasure beyond one's ability can attract disaster. It is normal that this lad would have such thoughts. After hearing Master Mo Yang's explanation, the crowd came to a realization. They finally understood why Zhang Xuan would reject such a wonderful opportunity. Zhang Xuan had no idea how he should respond. This fellow is way too narcissistic, don't have the strength to guard it, to think that you could think of such a thing. Everyone! Just as Zhang Xuan was about to clarify the situation, the master before him glanced at the surroundings and proudly declared, I have chosen this little fellow. So, regardless of what kind of treasures I have picked for him, I hope that you all wouldn't have any greedy thoughts towards it. Otherwise, you will be going against me. If so, don't blame me for being merciless. Master, what are you talking about? How would we dare to lay our hands on a person you have chosen? Master, rest assured. We would definitely not do such a stuff. Everyone quickly replied in chorus. All right, since I have already informed everyone else, feel free to buy it. You don't need to worry about attracting unwanted trouble. Master Mo Yang looked at Zhang Xuan with an encouraging smile. Zhang Xuan didn't expect that this fellow would be so self-assuming. Just when he was about to speak, the other party interrupted him yet again. You don't need to feel too touched by it. Since I have given the final slot to you, it means that our meeting is fated. It is hard to explain a thing such as fate through rational explanations, so you don't have to feel too thankful to me. I don't wish for anything in return for picking out a treasure for you. It is just purely kindness of my part. That. No need for this and that. This treasure is it. I can guarantee you that once you buy it, you will definitely rake in great profits. Master Mo Yang didn't even give Zhang Xuan an opportunity to talk. He retrieved an item from the pile of artifacts and passed it over. Earn. Seeing this treasure, Zhang Xuan was speechless. He had already analyzed it previously. It was a trash that could not be more useless. It wasn't even worth a single gold coin. Your loss would be equivalent to the price that you bought it at. Boss, can you collect the bill from this little friend here? Passing the treasure over, Master Mo Yang gestured for the artifact dealer to come. A total of 30,000 gold coins. The dealer walked over. Hurry up and foot the bill. This is the most valuable treasure I have appraised tonight. Little friend, you have struck it rich. Seeing how Zhang Xuan remained motionless, the elder stroked his beard, and a doting smile appeared on his face. After you return, clean up the outer layer. Try not to be too agitated by your newfound wealth. Agitated? Agitated your head. Upon having his words interrupted multiple times, Zhang Xuan could no longer rein his temper in. If you want to scam others, go ahead, I won't interfere in your affairs. Why did you have to look for me? Is it that enjoyable to be trying to act cool? Didn't you notice how hard I have tried to spare your pride?